see it, I just chose it. I'd like to call this meeting of the North Penn School Board to order. This meeting is being videotaped for community cable channels. Individuals attending this meeting and intending to speak to the board should be aware that they are being videotaped. In order to meet the requirements of the Pennsylvania Sunshine Law, it is necessary to record the names of all citizens who speak to the board during this meeting. To assure compliance with this requirement, it is essential that those planning to address the board come to the microphone, state their name and address, and members of the audience are asked to limit their questions and comments to no more than 5 minutes. This limit will permit time for all of those who wish to speak to the board to do so. Whenever members of the audience exceed this time limit, I'm going to wrap the gavel. Tonight, we are going to be involved in the first of a series of budget meetings to review the 1994-1995 school year budget for the North Penn School District. Tonight, if you look at your agenda, we will be presented with an overview of the budget by Dr. Alco, as well as presentations by Dennis Kelly of the revenues side of the budget. We will also start a review of expenditures tonight with presentations by Bill Hartenstein, Art Wood, and Ken Weir. There will be additional meetings on the budget. In our next meeting, which will be Thursday, April 28th, we will review the curriculum portion of the budget. That meeting will feature presentations by Fred Schmidt, Don Venema, Charles Keffer, and Judy Clark. On Tuesday, May 3rd, the administration will present the capital expenditures associated with the 1994-95 budget. While there will be time each night for both the board and the public comments, Tuesday, May 5th will be devoted exclusively to board and public comments on this year's budget. There will be 3 types of documents associated with each presentation. One is presentation sheets, similar to what you received in your budget packet tonight. In addition, there is a summary budget, 35 pages long. And this budget is available to the public. It's available for free. It will be available at Ken Weir's office starting tomorrow morning. The next budget meeting is Thursday. It will be available free and will be on display throughout the budget process, and if anybody wants one, they can pick it up. In addition, there's a 142-page document, which is the detailed budget, line by line. This document will be available to the public. It'll be available at Ken Weir's office starting tomorrow morning. It will cost $8. It's reproduction costs, and we'll recover it for that. Because mainly what we're going to talk about, because it's a lot of detail, is the documents that are going to be presented each night and the summary. Okay? Those are the documents that will be out and available throughout the budget process. To recap, I'm anticipating 4 budget meetings tonight, and then next Thursday, next Tuesday, and Thursday again. In addition, I'm anticipating that the preliminary adoption will occur May 11th. That's a Wednesday. That's a change. If people ought to note that date, it's a change from what's been on the calendar. The original date was May 10th, which is election night. We're moving it to the 11th, which is a Wednesday. In addition to the 5 meetings I've just outlined, I would anticipate, as is normal, additional meetings will be scheduled to allow the administration to present responses to board questions, as well as to allow the board to ask follow-up questions regarding this budget. Additional meetings, if they are required, will be scheduled on either the May 5th or the May 11th budget meetings. Dr. Alco, would you like to present the overview?
Thank you, Mr. Rettkamp. Good evening. Tonight, Before I begin my overview of the proposed preliminary 1994-95 budget, I'd like to thank some of the people who have assisted in its development. First, I'd like to thank the board liaisons who've asked important questions and who have helped provide direction to the cabinet. In particular, I would like to thank Mr. Reckcamp, our finance liaison, for his insight and his leadership with cabinet and myself through this process. I'd also like to thank the cabinet administrators that are here. The cabinet has worked closely with their board liaisons and also with their subordinate staff in the development of this budget. I want to acknowledge and thank the principals, supervisors, assistant principals, and department heads in our school district for evaluating our current needs and our operations. Tonight, it's my responsibility to take a few minutes to summarize or provide you with an overview of some of the major influences affecting the revenue and expenditure parts of the budget. And I'll begin with the revenue section. The single biggest source of school district funds are real estate property taxes. And as a growing school district over the last several years, we have been able to offset some of our increased expenditures with additional revenue from new commercial, industrial, and residential properties in our school district. In the last 12 months, however, for every new property that has been increasing our revenues, there have been decreases as a result of assessment appeals and assessment reductions. The net effect of these assessment appeals is that we are not increasing our total assessments even though we continue to grow as a school district. This means that we cannot rely upon our growth to help offset our expenses in this upcoming budget. Assessment appeals have cost our school district $1.6 million in lost revenues this year alone. State funding is another area of our revenue section that is significant for us. And our state funding in the next fiscal year has some mixed messages. The major source of state revenue is commonly referred to as the ESB, or the Equalized Subsidy for Basic Education. And in the governor's budget, this will remain relatively flat for our school district in the upcoming year. This will penalize a school district like North Penn because traditionally the ESB formula is driven by enrollment. And as our school district increases in enrollment and our ESB formula remains flat, we are penalized. There is less per pupil allocations from the state. Special education funding is another major area of revenue from the state. And at the present time, we project that the state special education funding will increase. However, if you've watched our board meetings in recent weeks, in fact, last Thursday night's meeting, you heard the board pass a resolution regarding the early intervention funds. And if the early intervention proposal that the governor has out right now is enacted, our special education funds will be severely reduced or impacted because we will have much heavier expenditures in special education that will shift from the state level to the local school district level. So we're going to have to watch the special education funding very closely over the next few months. At the federal level, the story continues that revenues will continue to be reduced. Chapter 1 funds, which are used primarily for remedial reading, are going to be reduced approximately 15%. We're going to see about a $61,000 reduction in federal funds. Mr. Kelly, in a few minutes, will review in much more detail all of the revenue accounts of our budget. I'd like to take just a few more minutes to talk about some of the influences on the expenditure side of the budget. The proposed preliminary 94-95 budget shows an increase of about $7.3 million in increased expenditures over the 93-94 budget. This represents an increase of 8.4% in expenditures. And there are some key areas that are influencing this increase significantly. The first is personnel costs. With about 1,300 employees in our school district, our personnel costs represent the most significant portion of this school district budget. We have budgeted increased expenditures for related to salary increases for staff and new personnel. As you know, the board is attempting to negotiate a contract with our teachers' bargaining unit and has offered a 3.2% cost of living increase. This budget contains that increase, and it represents about $1,446,000 in new money for that teacher contract. In addition, there is a 3.2% cost of living increase budgeted within the preliminary budget for all of the other employees in the school district, and this represents about $320,000. The other major personnel factor influencing the budget is new staff. Each year, our student enrollment grows, and new staff members are added to address enrollment growth. We are anticipating 440 new students from September of '93 to September of '94. So our proposed budget is built on a projected enrollment of 12,037 students. That is a 3.8% increase year to year in enrollment. The preliminary budget reflects several new positions. There are 29 new teaching positions in this budget. There are 2 elementary principal positions for the 2 new elementary schools. There are 2.5 custodial maintenance positions. There are 4 clerical positions. There are 4 hourly lunchroom aides. There are 2 special education learning support aides. And there is 1 elementary classroom aide. The new staff that have been placed into this budget will cost approximately $1.7 million for salary and benefits. So when you combine the salary increases and the salary and benefits for the new staff, that represents about $3.5 million. I don't want to mislead anybody in terms of the new staff. It isn't just a reflection of increased enrollment. I spoke earlier about reduction in federal funds, so we need additional reading people related to that. There are new programs. We're expanding computer education at the middle school level. That gets reflected in staff positions. And also course selections will impact that. The entire personnel part of this budget, as Mr. Reckkamp indicated, will be discussed by Mr. Schmidt and by Mr. Keffer, Mrs. Clark, and Dr. Venema as we tie that to personnel and curriculum and instruction this Thursday evening. Debt service is also impacting our expenditure portion of our budget. I spoke earlier about enrollment growth, and because of enrollment growth, we have had to build new schools. And in building new schools, we have borrowed money. And during the next fiscal year, we will phase in an increase of about $1.5 million in new debt service. And again, Mr. Kelly will talk about that in more detail this evening. Another influence on the expenditure side of the budget is our commitment to contracted non-public transportation. This past year, the board and the administration evaluated our transportation services. And one of the outcomes of that evaluation was a decision to enter into a contract with Ryder Corporation to provide contracted transportation services for our non-public school students residing in this school district. Now, this will save the district substantially in the years ahead because of cost avoidance in buying new buses and adding new staff. But the short-term implication is an increase of about $900,000 in the general fund budget to help pay for that contract. The two new schools and some of the new programs that we've talked about in recent months are also impacting this budget. By adding Bridle Path and Walton Farm Elementary School, we have created some new costs in the budget. Tonight you'll hear Mr. Wood, for example, talk about utility costs. Next week, Mr. Keffer will talk about some of the supplies, books, and other things associated with the new schools. But the new schools represent about $160,000 in additional supplies, utilities, book costs, for a total for the two schools of about $320,000. Another new program that the board has made a significant commitment to is the hands-on science program in our partnership with the Merck Institute. And in this budget, there contains $112,000 for science supplies and science equipment for those programs. Our commitment to vocational education is also impacting this budget. As we've worked with our local VOTEC school and with our guidance counselors to encourage students to participate in our fine vocational program, we have had an increase in students who will be attending the VOTEC school, and also our percent of students attending the VOTEC school vis-a-vis the other sending school districts is increasing. The net impact of that is that we need to budget an additional $180,000 in expenditures to pay for our share of the vocational education program. And finally, as we've created 3 new schools of 7th, 8th, and 9th grade, and including the transition year next year, we have budgeted additional funds so that we can provide the interscholastic and extracurricular programs for those schools in the 3 schools beginning next year. And we have added about $328,000 for those additional student activities. Next week, next Thursday night, May 5th, the board will have a discussion about the overall impact, the financial impact of this budget. There are a couple of different ways that the board can go in terms of funding this budget. One certainly is to rely exclusively on the property tax, as this district has done for a number of years. The other way is to introduce, as Mr. Redcamp spoke earlier, and the board has talked about at a few previous meetings, the use of an earned income tax. And those discussions will occur next week, and the impacts on the budget and going in either of those directions will be discussed next week. In conclusion, I would simply say that tonight's budget is larger than any of us would prefer. If we had a preference, we would prefer no increase in expenditures. But that is simply not realistic, as I've outlined some of the areas that are impacted on this budget. I would say that our district still holds a very stable spending pattern in relationship to the other school districts in this county. When you look at our total expenditures in relation to the number of pupils we educate, and we will educate over 12,000 next year, our per pupil costs place us 17th out of 21 school districts from the most recent intermediate unit statistics that I've made available to the board. In other words, there are only 4 school districts in this entire county which are able to hold their per pupil costs lower than ours. Now, we've held this position over the last few years in spite of the fact that we are one of the fastest growing school districts in this county, and that during the period from 1990 to September of '94, our enrollment increase will be from 10,354 students to a projected enrollment of 12,037. In the last 3 years alone, our enrollment has grown by 11%. Yet during those last 3 years, our tax increases have equaled 13.22%, slightly above the enrollment increases, but certainly if you factor in enrollment and inflation, below those combined figures. In fact, over the last 3 years, the budget has increased 4.4% on the average annually, if you take the 3 years and divide it. And this year, as we open 2 new elementary schools, and we continue to watch the assessment appeals cripple our revenue part of the budget, we're going to have to look again closely at the expenditures and make some difficult decisions. But I would ask the board and the public to not lose sight of the fact that this school district provides a first-rate education for the students here. And with those remarks, Mr. Rechtkamp, I think we're ready to turn things over to Mr. Kelly.
Yes. And before we open up to the board, I'd like Mr. Kelly to present the revenue portion of the budget.
Thank you, Mr. Rechtkamp. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to begin my presentation on page 1 in your packet, which is a visual aid, a graph of the breakdown of local, state, federal, and other revenue. As you can see, local sources make up about 83% of our budget, which is comparable to last year. As Dr. Jelko stated a little earlier, our state sources are up and our federal sources are down, and that has more or less balanced off the percentages. If you want to go over to page 2, one thing that my colleagues and I, when we get together, there is no doubt in our mind that the state's goal is to make education funded strictly by the local sources, by the local school boards. And as we move along, you'll see how this is happening. If you look at the very beginning, under our beginning cash resources, you see where last year we had a fund balance of $2.9 million, and this year it will drop down to about 1.5. We here at North Penn use our fund balance not as a separate source of income, but as part of the revenue source for the following year's budgets. During this past year, we've had a number of assessment appeals, as was spoken about already. The total about $800,000. In addition to those, we have additional IU costs, and due to additional enrollment at the Votech school, we had additional tuition charges from there. That has affected our fund balance and will bring it down to about $1.6 million. As we move on and go through the local revenue, the biggest change will take place, and I'll talk about that in a minute, with under our current real estate taxes. The rest of our local revenue is remaining relatively stagnant. In talking with the Board of Assessment and some of the planning commissions, we can expect our growth to continue, so you'll see that the interim taxes are remaining about the same, and also our transfer taxes. The only outstanding source of revenue is at the very bottom. If you look under miscellaneous revenue, it seems that it jumps from $3,500 up to $143,500. That's due to the Merck Science Grant of $140,000, which we're showing there as miscellaneous income. If you turn to page 3, here's where we deal with the assessment and assessment appeals. During the past year, as you see, from 1993-94 to 94-95, our assessments have grown 0.3%. In a normal year, say last year, for example, we'd grow about 4%. That's had a dramatic impact on our income. The one bright spot is North Penn is still a growing area. While we suffered $6 million reduction in assessments due to appeals, we also experienced $7.2 million in growth, which then gives us our $880,000 growth in assessments for the year. We're showing there, based on the same millage that we're currently using, revenue of $64,088,105. That will have a great impact on the rest of the revenue. If you move to page 4, where our summary of state revenue, you'll see that under SB, as Dr. Elko spoke to earlier, that's increasing $22,000. It has remained flat for the school district over the past 3 years. That, in a growing school district, has cost us about $1.2 million. Here's where you can see that the state is strictly making the local districts pay for their education of their own students. The only area you really see any type of an increase is under special ed, and we see an increase there of about $215,000. That's one area that our enrollment growth has helped us in that the formula is based strictly on your ADMs, so that's the reason for the increase there. The rest of the state sources is remaining stagnant. When you move on to federal sources, under Chapter 1, you see a decrease, as stated earlier, of about $60,000. In the 1990 census, they found that poverty had spread out west, and the money is still moving, as it was last year, out to California or out to the western states, because they feel that the number of poor children out there has increased to the point where they need to spread the money around. So the federal government hasn't increased the money. All they've done is taken what we used to receive and just spread it further through the country. The rest of the federal programs are also remaining relatively stagnant, with the exception of drug-free schools, which is dropping slightly. If you move on to page 6, where we have our summary of other revenues, under sale or compensation for loss of fixed assets, you see an increase up to $615,000. The two major portions of that are $500,000, which we expect to realize from the sale of Gwinnett Square surplus land, and $100,000, which we hope to get from our surplus buses, from the sale of those buses. Under receipts from other LEAs, there's a $34,000 increase there, which reflects the money we'll receive from Wissahickon and Colonial school districts as part of the Reading Recovery Program, which North Penn sponsored. And I'm sure Mr. Keffer will speak to that later in the procedures. There's another graph on page 7, which will, again, illustrate the breakdown between the federal, local, and state resources. I'd like to move now into debt service, which is on page 8. You see the increase in our principal and interest on our bond issues. If you look on page 9, I've given you a breakdown of the payments and the number of bond issues that are out there. This reflects about a $1.5 million increase in our debt service payments for this year. We have one more year that we will have an increase in debt service payments, and then they'll remain relatively flat for the rest of at least the 1990s. That's really concludes the presentation.
Any board questions on the overview or the revenue portion?
Just a few, Mr. Redcamp, just to start here. I have two. Mr. Kelly, could you tell me how many dollars are attributed to unfunded mandates from the state? If we could just pull those out and what they're costing us specifically in a dollar amount, can you give me that?
Off the top, Ms. Mingle, no, I can't.
Could you get that for me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, thank you. My other question is, the sale of the Gwinnett Square land, when is the settlement date for that?
I defer to Mr. Wood for that.
That will be based on the approved subdivision, and that will happen in the next fiscal year.
In this fiscal year. I can't recall the sales agreement off the top of my head, but was there interest monies that belong to us as we wait for the settlement date?
Yes, there is, but the interest monies would be just on the deposit. That's held in escrow, and we will accrue the interest, but it's the 10%.
It was a 10%?
Of the 500 and some odd thousand. So it's interest on $50,000.
But you definitely anticipate that settlement will be done in this year, or will default and the land is available to sale to the next highest bidder. Those are all my questions for this moment.
I have concerns regarding the rider transportation. As it was presented to us, I basically heard that we would have a $3 million savings, but I did not recall any mention of it being deferred or an initial, cost in this current budget, in this upcoming budget of $900,000.
If we could just put your question on hold for maybe 10 or 15 minutes till Bill begins to talk about transportation, maybe that will emerge there, and if it doesn't, we would come back and answer that rather than trying to answer it now in terms of questions for the overview, if you don't mind. I think we can.
Okay, that'll be related, well, it was related to Dennis's presentation. The other question, which I don't expect you to perhaps be able to answer tonight, but I would also like for the future, is in some of those costs that you presented, such as the books and the musical instruments and supplies, I would like to know what the dollar figure that is expected to be taken out of the general fund versus the bond fund. Because it is my understanding that a good, considerable amount of those startup expenses will be coming from bond money, which is not related to tonight.
And just to clarify, I did not indicate musical instruments. I said supplies and books and some other things that are in this budget. But there are a list of capital expenditures that next Tuesday night, we're going to devote the entire evening to a discussion about those.
And they will all be from the general fund related to?
No. No, they
Okay.
wouldn't be, they would not be part of the general fund. We have no capital, we have very few capital expenditures in the general fund.
Thursday night would be all of the items for curriculum that were in the general fund. The following Tuesday, May 3rd,
Right.
will be the capital, all of the capital items in this year's budget.
That would be musical instruments,
If they're capital.
tractors, you
Okay.
name it.
I would like to know the amount related to Gwinnett Square, back to Gwinnett Square now, Walton Farm and Bridle Path, that is impacting this specific general budget.
In terms of equipment, or in terms of all costs?
The additional cost, what sort of
All
assigned
Okay, we can work on that.
with the addition of the two new schools? Thank you.
Is it just Walton Farm or both?
And bridal.
Walton Farm and
The
Brighton?
two new
Two
schools
new
that will
elementary
be
schools.
coming online, I'd like to
Is
know
that-
what their actual
Okay.
impact is on this budget.
That's fine.
I have a question for Dr. Elko. Alan, when you mentioned the 3.2% that would be reflected towards the teachers, the offer of 3.2% per year, then also to all the other staff, administration, do you know what kind of dollar number that represents in millions, an idea?
In millions or what?
Whatever, yeah, how much of
Yeah.
it?
Teachers with salary, and then when you increase salary, you're also increasing your contribution for retirement and Social Security as well, which is driven off of salary, about $1.45 million.
Okay.
And then for the other
For the other, which
500
year?
and some employees, about $320,000.
Okay. Thank you.
Dr. Elko, that includes, or does that not include the anticipated new faculty to be added to the new elementary schools?
That does not include the new faculties
Okay.
for,
For
that
the
does
two
not
elementary-
include the new staff for the district.
Okay.
Okay.
That would be separate, and the total new staff for the district I reflected as about $1.7 million
Okay.
in costs, salary and benefits.
Okay.
And again, this is just an
1.7.
overview, and Fred will provide more detail Thursday night, and we will get into the rationale and where the positions are and all the details connected with that for you.
And as a matter of fact, if you go to the object section of the budget that the board has got, people will do tomorrow morning, if they'd like, or next Thursday, you will find that if you add the salaries and the benefits, this year's budget, it's 80% of our budget. Next year, it's 76%. And part of the reason that's going down is A lot of it has to do, because you heard, the folks are going up. And a lot of it's gonna have to do with some actual savings that's buried in the expenditure side. And we'll hear about those primarily Thursday night. The savings.
Okay.
Insurance is a good piece of it.
Okay, Mr. Kelly, another question. Recognizing this is a preliminary budget, am I correct in assuming that here under summary of local revenues, in the areas where we receive revenue from charges passed, there is no, you are not proposing an increase here, so that of course is up for board discussion like everything else is, but you have not proposed, or the administration has not proposed an increase in things such as rentals, day school tuition, summer school tuition, adult education, et cetera.
No,
Fees and charges have not been increased under this proposal.
right, the summer school and adult education, they're shown, they balance off one another, and expenses and revenue balance. And on the rentals, that's really the projected rental from, the main portion is the rental from the base program.
Okay, so when you say balance, you're saying that it operates to break even, but you
Exactly.
have not entertained as a cabinet the opportunity to make some money here to offset other costs.
That's correct.
Okay. The other thing is, Mr. Kelly, I appreciate graphics such as this. I would like to request another one. Ralph has just mentioned that 80% of our budget is related to salary and benefits. There's another, I guess, a significant portion that is related to debt service, monies owed.
Yes.
I would like to see the amount of, the percentage of that 100% that we have to be able to seriously look at when it comes to cutting, it comes to making some decisions, recognizing that it's going to be awfully tough, if not impossible, to cut into things such as salary, benefits, and debt service. So I want to see exactly how much of a percentage we have to work with when it comes to.
That's fine, Mr. Mingle.
Does that make sense?
Yes, it
Am I
does.
clear?
Question. Did I hear you just say that adult education tuition and expenses balance out?
Yes.
If I go a little forward to adult education, and there's no page number.
If you look in your
If
document.
you wait in a little
Yeah.
while, Ken will go in more detail about adult education for you.
In your document.
289 to 321, 302 to 321.
These two, you add together. Adult ed and community service, those two are together.
If we get back here, adult education is one of those items, it's a wash item. It's, the more it goes into the revenue side, the more it goes into the expense side, and whatever the numbers are, they're designed to balance, and in fact, over the years, have balanced.
Okay,
As we speak, it was designed to do that.
right.
Yes.
It was never been decided to be used as an opportunity
It
to
is.
make money to offset other
That is-
expenses in the
It's
district.
certainly not a revenue maker for the
Okay.
district.
Maybe we should look at it.
But the fact is, though, it has made more than its expenses.
By design, but it's not a,
Not by design,
it's
by
not, it's
action.
designed to cover, and so you cover more than it, but it's not designed to be a revenue generator
Correct.
that you could count on.
As a
year to year.
fundraiser, it isn't a fundraiser, it's just whatever comes at the end of the end of the program is then rolled over into general budget, correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
Other board questions? If not, I'd like to move on to to start in the expense side, and Art.
Thank you, Ralph. As we begin to look at the expense side of the plant operations budget, or the 2,600 category by objects, the first item under technical services, and I have not included everything that is charged to a specific account, but I've given some examples because the question is always raised as to what these items include. So when you look at technical services in the 93-94 budget, we had $45,000. That will be increasing to $46,800. It's a minimal increase, and I would also preface my remarks throughout the evening by the fact that in everything that we're doing, we are adding 2 additional buildings. And we're actually adding in excess of 150,000 square feet and some 50 or 60 acres of maintenance that we have to assume. So those new additions are shown in this budget as we go through the items. Second item under disposal refuge service, we just recently bid that. And as you can see, we had a decreased bid. We had a bid at the IU level for our school district of $61,000. And I reflect 72 because we only bid to be picked up throughout the school year, and in the summer we're on call, as well as we have additional, these items were bid, but we have additional pickups as it relates to our recycling, both cardboard, corrugated carton material, plus any trash transfer deliveries we make when we take material or any roll-off dumpsters that we use. So although our bid would reflect at the county level of $61,000 plus, our actual budgeted amount is 72 as compared to 83.8 last year. Snow plowing services, as you know, we lived a charmed life for many years. I did include this year for the 94-95 budget an amount of $10,000. We would hope that we would not spend that. That is not an expenditure as it relates to our own vehicles, as it relates to rental equipment we use, and as it relates to manpower, salt, cindering, and so forth. That is an expenditure when I have to move snow, for an example, as we did this year with triaxle trucks at the high school off the property so we could stack the newest snow. And that's the thing whereby we bring in large equipment, usually from Allied Concrete or Nicecrete, so that $10,000 is in case we have to do that. As you look at utilities under natural gas, this part of the budget does not include energy for natural gas. We only use natural gas at York Avenue Elementary, in the kindergarten and the room next to it, and in the bus garage at the high school for energy. The natural gas you see here is for cooking, emergency generators, and domestic hot water usage. Our electricity, I share with you the providers for the various buildings. Our increase there would reflect primarily the increase that we will share in with the addition of Bridle Path and Walton Farm. At those buildings, for an example, I have budgeted $68,000 in electricity for each of those buildings. So that is reflected in the increase from the 1.5 million to the almost 7 million. Bottled gas, once again, is used for cooking, actually not cooking, emergency generators and domestic hot water in some of our buildings, and that stays rather stable. Our water will be increasing. We have had some increases in our water rates, plus minimal increases, plus, once again, Bridle Path and Walton Farm coming online, Bridle Path being North Wales and Walton Farm being North Penn. Sewerage, of course, we have had some minimal increases. Once again, we will be bringing online both Bridle Path and Walton Farm, although if you look at your line items for sewer, our sewer is all over the place as far as costs, just because of the different providers or the different receivers that we use for that service. And there is no easy way to explain the various municipalities and how they charge. And that has always been a question. You can see at Gwynnor we're $9,500 per year, and if you go to Bridle Path, you're $2,250, Walton Farm $1,700. So it depends on how the municipality is charging for our sewer usage. As you move from the sewage, you move on to repairs and maintenance, and I've listed many of the things we reflect there as far as repairs where we're calling outside people in to provide services. Whether it would be HVAC, boiler maintenance, when we have motors rewound, glass replacement is always a large one. Preventive maintenance contracts on our energy management system and on our chillers at the high school in Hatfield, our automatic temperature controls, anything whereby we call an outside contractor in for service. And I'm reflecting a minimal increase there with the understanding that we are under warranty, and one of the things I need to share with the board is that next year, some of these numbers will increase considerably because we lose the benefit of a one-year warranty at Bridle Path and Walton Farm. And that will be reflected as we enter next year's budget process. If you look at rental of equipment, I've listed some of the things. One of the reasons that reflects the increase that it does, we did rent both small front-end loaders and large front-end loaders, so I have just tried to cover, based on our experience this winter, in case we would have another winter of 93. We're hoping that we don't. Under extermination services, that number is increased from $11,800 to $14,000. That includes, and if you take, for an example, looking at the $11,800 this year, our $796 per month as we've been on IPM, plus the charges in previous months, the additional charges are for specialized services. As we talk tonight, we have 2 buildings where termites are busily at work, and they're the type of things that we have to bring in special services to deal with that kind of a situation. So I have budgeted $14,000 for next year. Other purchased services, that is quite an increase, and many of you will remember that we were kind of blindsided with a tank indemnification fee of some $35,000, and that is reflected in the category under other purchased property services. Insurance, that is our property, our liability, and that reflects an increase from $197,575 to the $221,005. But once again, we are adding both Bridle Path and Walton Farm, so they're included in that. That is typical of item J, which is telephone. Our telephone, of course, will be increasing from $180,000 to $195,000, and that is not all reflected in Bridle Path and Walton Farm, but that reflects some new modem lines as it relates to data processing and interconnecting buildings. If you go over to supplies and materials, and I've listed just some of the items. Every item we buy to run our department comes out of that category. So you will see the increase reflected for Bridle Path and Walton Farm because in this case we need to buy product to open those buildings. And we will be using filters and lamps and paper products and some of the other things that you see listed here. So that is all inclusive in that category. Gas energy, as I stated before, is the heating of the York Avenue Kindergarten, the classroom next to the kindergarten, and the entire bus garage. And that is all done with gas, and that increase is reflected to be very minimal. Under fuel oil, we had the very good news today of at a bid opening. We are in a consortium with the IU, and we're pleased to announce that that budget category, although we are adding Bridle and Walton, will come down to $335,664. We bid number 2 heating fuel that all of us use in our homes that heat with oil, and our bid opening today was 0.5328 cents per gallon, 53 cents a gallon, and that's most fortunate. This year we're currently paying 61, almost 62 cents. So we're very pleased with that, and that's a nice change that we will be making in the budget.
Art, give the number again.
The new number will be $335,664, based on 630,000 gallons.
Good job, Art.
Attached to the back of my presentation, and I'll just mention it briefly, is a staffing chart for our department. And I just need to share with the board and once again warn the board that this is a temporary one-year measure. Typically, when we open a new building of 77,000 square feet, we would be adding a head custodian and 4 custodial cleaners, or 10 people when you combine Bridle and Walton. When we add interscholastic sports back to Penfield and Pembroke, we would be adding 2 people, typically because of the additional burden with the outside field lining, the track lining, and the maintenance for interscholastic athletics. We're going to try something at those buildings. One of the things that's going to happen this year, we will only have one team at each of the 3 buildings. Whereas when we do become 7, 8, 9, we'll have 2 teams at each of the 3 buildings. So we're going to try to trailer between buildings and use a crew of some existing people to do the field lining at Brookfield and Dale. And we think we can pull that off. It's a task that is an awesome task in the fall. It's a major task in the spring. The lining of a cinder track, I mean, we take for granted the high school track is always lined because they're painted on. On a cinder track, you're dragging that track, maintaining it, and lining it for each track meet. So my staffing reflects, instead of the 12 people that we would typically be adding, we've downsized because with the renovations at Penndale, we're going to be giving major parts of that building to the general contractor. They are expected to maintain their areas as clean as you would maintain a construction site. So we're reducing 6 full-time and 1 part-time at Dale, and we're going to streamline a bit at the high school by reducing 3 full-time custodial cleaners. So that will give us a net gain of 2 full-time and actually 3 full-time, but in a FTE full-time equivalent, 2.5 people. I just need to remind you that when we open Penndale and we have that building up to speed, that we'll be coming back to staff accordingly. It is a 200,000 square foot building, and it does require, with everything that goes on in that building at a secondary level, it requires staffing. Questions?
No.
Oh, excuse me. At the end, I'm sorry.
We're going to go do them all, and it was a good presentation. Bill, direct hand.
The transportation budget represents the 2700 series of the budget. The difference between the current budget and the proposed budget, the current budget is $3.7 million, the proposed budget is $4.6 million. On the exhibits that I have for you on page 1, it lists the major categories of the transportation budget, with the exception of salaries and benefits, which Mr. Smith will address later in the week. However, if you look at the chart on the back of that page, you will see that there is a significant decrease in salaries and benefits for the transportation department for the coming year. The main reason for that is we will be reducing our staff in the transportation department something in the range of 36 to 42 employees as a result of contracting for all non-public transportation. We will be reducing from 109 active routes today down to an estimated 81 routes. As a result of that, we have a reduction in salaries and the benefits that go along with it. For the coming year, under federal mandate, we will be required to institute a drug testing program, which has never been in the budget before. And in the past, the cost of physicals has appeared under the categories that are administered by Mrs. Clark. We've moved those over this year, and consequently we have a $10,800 figure there. About $900 of that is for physicals, the rest of it for drug testing, which is mandated. Under repairs and maintenance contract, repairs to building, equipment, and vehicles, there is also a reduction there. Obviously, we have less equipment on the road. Under purchase services, there is an increase. The contracted services there for transportation should not be confused with rider student transportation. Those are special ed transportation services that are extended to somewhere between 75 and 100 special students in the district requiring special attention, and it is extremely, extremely expensive. We are experiencing an increase there. We have no idea what early intervention might mean. I've asked Mr. Cochran to hold on to some of those buses that we've anticipated for some additional revenue because we just may need some. We are budgeting there a 5% increase in those contracted costs. Under vehicle insurance, we're going to have 25 to 30 fewer buses in active service and as a result of that, our insurance costs will decrease. We run a separate network over there for data processing, on which we do all of our bus scheduling and all of our employee time sheets, etc. We have increased that budget this year by $2,000 in order to provide some additional training for those people. They have not had any training programs within the last several years, and I think it's very imperative that in order to get as much as we can out of the EDGELOG system, that they be fully trained. So there's a modest increase that is represented there for training. Under supplies, we are reducing that overall category from a total of $241,000 down to $169,000. Again, obviously, with fewer vehicles on the road, we don't need as many parts and tires, etc. In the area of fuels, Art reported to you just a few minutes ago that he was pleased to hear that the cost of oil for heating the buildings has decreased. He has shared with me that it is understanding that the cost of diesel fuel is also going to be decreased, but I don't have a figure for you at this time. But again, you see a decrease there from $160,000 for fuels down to $130,000. Today, with 109 buses on the road, we consume about 1,100 gallons per day. Mr. Cotrin and his staff are estimating that will drop to approximately 900 gallons per day. Under new equipment, if you would draw a line through the $11,094 and make that a zero, we will not be asking for any new equipment in the general fund budget. Under replacement equipment, however, last year we asked for $2,400. We are asking for a modest increase there, and that's really for the cost of mechanics' tools. The biggest cost increase in this budget is for the rider contract, which comes to $1,575,000. And if I can for a minute try to address Mrs. Sheriff's question. By spending $1,500,000 for a rider contract, the board, in essence, saves $2.5 million worth of expenditures. Let me explain how that happens. I would refer to the board over to the study that was done by the Griffith people, and I'll give you a copy of that if you don't have one, under the review of pupil transportation service in the North Penn School District. Griffith had estimated that under the terms of the contract that was finally adopted, that the budget exclusive of that contract cost would be $3.4 million. If you add the cost of the rider contract, that would bring it up to $4.9 million. Mr. Cotrin has been able to bring that budget in at $4.6 million. If we had kept all transportation in-house, which was an option, I would refer you to the final graph which I have for you. In the 93-94 school year, the budget of the transportation was $3.7 million. If we had kept all transportation services in-house, we would have had to replace a number of buses. We would have had to buy additional buses. We would have had to improve the facility over there. If you've been to the bus garage, you're well aware that we are at maximum there. We cannot park any additional buses. We would have had to acquire either land there, or we would have had to establish a separate depot somewhere else in the school district. We would have had to find additional parking space for all those employees. We would have had the additional cost of employee salaries. We would have had the additional cost of employee benefits. So the bottom line, quite frankly, is by spending $1.5 million for a rider contract, the board, in essence, avoided capital costs of $1.8 million plus an additional $900,000 in the general fund budget. So from a cost-effective point of view, I don't think the board had much of a choice. And it elected to go in-house in the next year's budget based on a millage of a value of $278,000. We would have been looking at a minimum of 6.5 mils increase just for that. In the area of data processing, which is the next page, which is the 2800 series, there really is no change from last year. Last year, there was $110,000 budget under purchase professional and technical services. That was a bit confusing in the sense that the cost of Xeroxing was also included in that. Mr. Kelly has broken that out for you with $70,000 of that being attributable to data processing. That covers our software and our hardware contracts, and $40,000 of that is Xerox. Last year, there was no money in there for training. As you're well aware, we have significantly expanded the administrative data processing system, and we have not provided appropriate orientation in servicing and opportunities for Mr. Mismano or Mrs. Joss for additional training. They are now responsible for almost 100 new users of the system, and it's imperative that they get some additional training. So we're asking for $2,500 there. Last year, we had $6,500 under supplies. Again, it was a bit confusing because that $6,500 included not only data processing but also Xerox. We've broken that out for you this year with $24,000 being data processing costs and $41,000 Xeroxing. We have asked for no new equipment or any replacement equipment in this year's general fund budget. And finally, for the third department for which I'm responsible, which is food service, I would refer you to page 100, 3100 series, and I think it speaks for itself.
It must be in black again.
Like, in the black.
Must be.
What else?
That's a fundraiser.
That's a fun one.
That's a
Supposed to make money.
fundraiser.
Supposed to.
Before we go to board questions,
Mr. Redcamp, for the sake of the audience that perhaps isn't aware of that, the general fund carries a zero contribution for the food services department. There is no money in the general fund to support food services.
and that's despite adding computers to all the food service lines so that it's convenient for kids to use it.
Bill, you ought to pat yourself on the back. How many school districts operate a non-school district contribution to the food service in this county? Have a ballpark estimate?
Not very many. I can't give you
Besides
an
us?
exact, but not very many.
Yeah.
We're very proud of it. None. Mr. Schmidt said there are none. Thank you, Mr. Schmidt. They probably are.
And the kids like it. It's even better. Okay. Mr. Weir.
Thank you, Ralph. Before referring to the numbers that are included in your packet tonight, I thought it might be appropriate to say something about the variety of responsibilities that are assigned to the Office of School Community Services. Most of you know that with the retirement of Bill Jacobs 2 years ago, the responsibilities of board secretary were assigned to me, and they were added to some 13 other responsibilities which I had at the time I assumed that 14th responsibility. It's not easy to see what all those responsibilities are by looking at the numbers which you've been given in your packet tonight. For your benefit, I would say that we're responsible for many community relationships, all internal communications, external communications, publications and editorial services, the community education program, sometimes called adult education, all the community use of school facilities, the contracting by community groups for community use of schools, for the volunteer services program, most recently for the community cable television effort, for all the partnership programs that are initiated and require some overseeing, for the Educational Foundation, for the overseeing of the child care program, and for a variety of administrative services, not only in this building, but as they impact throughout the district. And perhaps the last and most interesting responsibility assigned to our office are those special things that are assigned by the superintendent and the board president. Of course, that's not unique to any cabinet member because every cabinet member shares that kind of a responsibility. Now, more specifically, if we would look at the adult education program sheet, which is in your packet for tonight, it's been said earlier that it is the expectation that this program will yield a slight profit to the general fund. We are not supposed to go into debt in any given year. There are unusual circumstances from time to time, and perhaps on a 5 or 10 year cycle, there might be a year where it gets very close, or we might not quite make it. That hasn't been the case in recent years. Last year, our profit to the school district was $9,821, and that was absorbed by the general fund. Our profit to date, in the years that I've been counting and have been responsible, are just a couple dollars short of $77,000 profit to the school district general fund, if you will. Of course, we have to do a lot of estimating about how many people will enroll for programs, how many classes will have sufficient enrollment to actually take place, how many classes might be canceled due to lack of enrollment, and such considerations. With those considerations in mind, we're obligated to build a budget that calls for space or room to move, if you will. Let me use as an example a very popular course we might be offering in Lotus or some other computer program. We might advertise one course for one night, one class, but the interest in the enrollment is so great that we might have to add 5 sections or 6 sections and get 2 or 3 additional teachers. We have to guess, if you will, estimate is a better word perhaps, on how many classes will be very popular, how many classes may not be popular, and what the total enrollment might be. We have to be able, within the parameters of this budget, to pay all of our instructors, to buy all the needed supplies, and to take care of all the expenses required for those classes. So we have to have a little bit of room. We have to do a little bit of overestimating, if you will, so that there's room and we don't have to come to Mr. Kelly and to the business office staff and ask for a great number of budget transfers because we have teachers to pay and we have materials to buy. If you look at this list of adult education expenses, you will see that we provide for supervision. We have a supervisor in the high school. Every night we have classes there, a retired gentleman who has served the school district long and well and continues to serve us as an hourly employee for supervision in the evening. 20% of my assistant's salary is assigned to community ed and the supervision and administration of community ed. I've said we pay our teachers and we pay all those who work in the various community ed programs. That includes the community aquatic program, the gymnastics program, the performing arts programs, and all those special efforts which we sponsor in community education. You know, we're in charge of the GED program and a great variety of community services. In a typical year, we will enroll approximately 14,000 participants in community ed activities and community ed classes. This enrollment allows us to do something very nice in the way of community service, which is certainly a plus for the senior citizens in the community who choose to take advantage of it, and for the board and the administration who benefits from the good community relations which this engenders. During the past year, for instance, we enrolled senior citizens at no fee, which had a value to us and to them of $8,540 of enrollment fees. You know, anyone with a gold card could take classes in the community ed program, and the usage of those gold cards was an additional $8,540 in goodwill, or we assumed that 99% of it was goodwill. There might have been a disappointment now and then, but we assumed that 99% was goodwill. In the community education program, we have the opportunity to provide for many partnership efforts, collaborative efforts with other community groups. We have many programs that we plan in collaboration with such community agencies, respected agencies as the YMCA, Family Service, the North Penn Hospital, the North Penn Hospice, and such. If you were to study any of our tabloids, any of our brochures from season to season, you would see many of these collaborative efforts. You know that we have a few trips and tours which we provide, and these are expected to generate income just as our classes do. So we pay for our teachers, we pay for our secretarial services, we pay for our publicity, our postage, and we expect to make a little extra for the general fund. To reiterate what was said earlier, we have never been assigned the responsibility of creating a large profit. We have been expected to operate a break-even and make a small profit perhaps, but we have never been given the charge to see how much money we could make and how much we could charge. So we offer classes and services at what we consider to be a modest fee.
Ken, wasn't the history of adult education the result of a building utilization, a district committee on building utilization that recommended that our schools were not being used by the community.
That's true.
And
That's true.
they recommended that we begin an adult education program.
We had a very minor, very small program, very small effort prior to that.
Today's program speaks for itself when you go to the high school on any given night or on a Saturday.
It's very popular, very popular. I believe the second sheet in your packet tonight is the Office of School Community Services. The first item you see listed is the director and the assistant director. That does not represent all of my salary, nor does it represent all of Gail Tatum's salary. I told you a moment ago that the assistant has a portion of her salary assigned to the community education program, and you'll see later on in this review that a portion of my salary is assigned for school board services. So that does not represent the entire salary of either of us. The secretarial salaries represent a full-time secretary and 2 people who work part-time in community education and part-time in the Office of School Community Services. I'll skip technical services and come back to that in a moment. I'll say that the postage for community relations and the supplies for community relations, which you see listed, are calculated 1/3 of the expenditures for the Educational Service Center. By our tradition here, we have assigned 1/3 of the postage and 1/3 of the office supplies to the business office, to the curriculum office, and to the Office of School Community Services. That means that Judy Clark's department doesn't get charged anything for postage or for supplies, as Fred's doesn't. And I
Yet
guess
they spend the most because of sending IEPs and all the special education materials that have to be made.
I guess someday we'll take another.
Let's not complain about postage. Keep going.
Someday we'll take another look at that, but that's the explanation that is tradition in this organization. 1/3 of postage and 1/3 of supplies. Now let's go back to the technical services for community relations. In this area, we spend for typesetting, for some graphic design, for the mechanicals, the repros, and the kinds of things that are preliminary to printing jobs. It is our custom, whenever possible, to take camera-ready copy to printers, and under purchase technical services, we are buying the preliminary work that helps us get ready for printing. Lots of typesetting there. And service for mailing, mail advertising. A local company does some of our mass mailings, such as our back-to-school newsletter, the calendar, the bus schedules, and some of the very large mailings. So those are the kinds of expenditures that we have in that item. I mentioned a moment ago that we're responsible for printing for many areas throughout the district. You might ask what kinds of things would be printed from this account. The single largest expenditure is for the school calendar, the printing of the school district activities calendar. I mentioned also we print the bus schedules, a variety of envelopes, office referral forms, address labels, nurses' reports, back-to-school news, all sorts of routing slips, plant operations forms, progress cards, and various printing jobs that are our responsibility to complete. Books and periodicals are purchased to serve many people. They're routed throughout the offices and shared, so that's an expenditure that is not unique to us, but one which affects many. I said that we were responsible for volunteer services. This is primarily a recognition program. We have an annual recognition event, and we recognize our volunteers on their 5-year anniversaries. Each week we have over 800 people volunteering in the schools. That's not incidental drop-ins, that's regularly scheduled volunteers. And we have some minimal expenditures for supplies, and I think for the service we get for the over 800 volunteers, that the recognition event and the efforts in their behalf are good return. If the return is very good for the expenditure.
There is no better return to money spent in this district than that $1,600. Those folks are gold.
The next page you see is board services. I've already explained that a percentage of my salary is assigned there. I should comment that the expenditure for assistant board secretary is a budgeted figure of $5,000. I think Mrs. Canavan, who serves as the assistant board secretary, would appreciate it if I would say that her overtime charges have never exceeded $1,000, And so if we're looking to cut the budget, that's a good place to begin, because this number does not fairly represent the earnings of Mrs. Canavan. This was an arbitrary figure when it was first budgeted, and I'm sure that we should reduce it as we move through this review.
Consider it done.
Consider it done. We do have some subscriptions, and we do have the PSBA membership. Board supplies are minimal because we use supplies from all offices, especially the Office of School Community Services, to serve the board. You can see expenditures there for audits and professional services. Notice that there is no travel for board in this area. Under television, you know that last September we hired our new television specialist, Mr. Gilmer, who's done a fine job of getting us up and running. We want to make an adjustment to that salary figure. That is not a correct salary figure in budget for 94-95, and that needs to be adjusted downward. There is an error in that figure. If we take Mr. Gilmer's present salary and calculate 3.2%, I believe a corrected number would be $28,380 as a projected salary for this preliminary budget. You know that we're doing lots of things different in the area of television at the high school, and that the responsibilities are shifting. You know that there's a new marriage between the Educational Service Center and the high school television department, if you will, and we're working on those relationships on a daily basis. When Don Venema talks about educational TV in his budget presentation, he'll be saying some things that overlaps into this area, and I have things that I could say that overlap as well. I think based upon our plan to discuss equipment, replacement and new equipment under bond fund purchases, we should take a look at the last two numbers on the page, $20,600 projected for new equipment and $5,000 projected for replacement equipment. And with your permission, we should save the discussion of those numbers for the night when we talk about the bond fund.
Those are projected to be capital dollars, is what you're saying.
I think they would be better discussed that evening and moved to that discussion.
This was the salary part of it.
Thank you.
I would now open it up for board questions for the administrators who presented the non-curriculum pieces of the session.
Yes, Mr. Reckamp, I have a few questions. Going to, let's do this, I ripped my sheets apart. I guess Art Wood budget. Here it is. As I look at the not available, unfortunately not available to the public tonight, is the breakdown you provided the board members of the difference in fees and charges between PP&L and PICO. And I think we have every right as a board to start a feud between PP&L and PICO when we look at how fair the figures seem to be from PP&L and how almost unexplainable the figures are from PICO. Now, I live in North Wales, and PICO will probably have my electric shut off before I get home tonight. But I will file for a building permit for a windmill because they won't do that to me. But anyway, I think those figures are important to be put out to the public, and these two companies ought to go at it, because if we could get PICO to give us the rates we get from PP&L, it would make another considerable savings here in the budget. So I needed to say that, and you do have those figures, and I really feel they should be out.
I think
there's other members of the board that would agree with me.
in support of what Mrs. Mengel was saying, the true comparison, and PICO's not very pleased with us that we have this comparison, but we have a Penn Field and a Penn Brook that are identical buildings, have the same demand, same horsepower motors, same lighting, same everything, one serviced by PICO, one by PP&L, and you can see the difference that at Brook we're looking at $98,500, and at Field we're looking at $69,000. So that reflects the utility provider. And I think the same thing is true with the borough. The borough of Lansdale buys their electricity from PP&L, and we're at $106,000 for almost a 200,000 square foot building, compared to $585,000 for our high school, which is PICO. So Mrs. Mengel's point is well taken. I don't know what we can do to change it, but
And if they don't like it, they can sue me. But I think everybody needs to know this, and if we could get PP&L's rates from this other company, it would really help the budget in this large school district. The other comment I want to make, Art, and I want to make it publicly because I said this to you in private in the budget sessions when you held with your liaison, and that as I look through what you have projected here for employees, I feel you've done a very good job in trying to keep, we're adding on 2 more schools, and you want to add how many more full-time employees into your pack?
actually,
It's 2.5?
it's 2.5.
Well, I just want it on the public record here that I think that I said it in that meeting, and I'll say it again, I think you're cutting below the cuticle when you add on 2 more buildings and you're looking for 2.5 more people. Now, I'm only saying this specifically to you and to your department and these folks. I may not feel that other places in the district.
We'll wait till Thursday night, Donna, for you to say that.
Yeah, we'll start on personnel later. But anyway, Art, I think you may be getting too close to shave here, and it wouldn't surprise me if you had to come back. And I want to recognize that. Bill, over to transportation. As I listen to you about rider transportation, 2 things. When Ryder came in, I don't know all the specific details because, of course, your liaison dealt with that most of the time, but when Ryder came in and gave us recommendations as to what we could do to alleviate ever-growing busing concerns that we were holding to ourselves, were there other groups considered for busing? We have this early intervention disaster that may be facing us, and then we look at our special needs, handicap, special children busing. Did Ryder look at that?
No, we kept that whole portion for all of the special ed busing in-house. That was not considered as part of Ryder's contract.
Any rationale for why we kept that specifically and not let Ryder bid that?
I suspect the answer to that more than anything else is, from a fiscal point of view, we can probably coordinate that cheaper and better in-house than we can by doing that through Ryder.
Okay. And as I listened to your presentation, and you provided us with all, certainly I heard all the contraindications as to why we shouldn't be keeping such a mass fleet of busing. Did you not also give us good reason to look now at the entire package? I mean, is that down the line? Is that in the future? If the overall costs, you build a good case for us to turn it all over to a contract, if that's what I think I heard.
I think it's important to be said that there, amongst our North Penn driver employees, there is a concern that the board may be entertaining the possibility in future years of contracting the entire package. We discussed that at length during the Griffith presentation. And quite frankly, if you'll recall, Griffith gave our transportation department an A. Our transportation department is very economically run. The safety record that they developed this past winter was above reproach. It is fiscally irresponsible to think to contract the entire public transportation portion. One of the things that we did get from this contract, which isn't really evident, is the opportunity to grow. We know, as Dr. Elko said, our enrollment continues to grow, and it will grow. And looking at the PEL studies, we're looking at a significant growth between now and the year 2000. By dropping from a level of 109 buses today down to 81, we now have that growth piece for the next 5, 6, 7 years, where we don't have to look at a significant investment in capital as far as the building is concerned. And that gives us that opportunity now to grow back to that figure of 109 and accomplish any additional growth plus a new high school in 1997.
In recent years, and I don't have the numbers in front of me, we've spent anywhere from $500,000 to well over $1 million a year in new buses on an annual basis.
to realize, to your point specifically, when the Griffith study came out, it specifically looked at, should we go total, okay? And people need to understand, Herculean Valley is talking about going to private busing. And they specifically said, it does not make sense for this district.
Okay.
But going with all of the non-public made sense, and like you said, it provides us the room to grow. It avoids, we were at the point where, I mean, the buses were this far apart in the bus garage. We were gonna have to enlarge our parking, we were gonna have to increase the bus garage, the capacity there, the staff there, and we were gonna come up to a whole bunch of millions in capital and above our capacity to handle it. And now we've got the room to grow, and the thing that came out of the Griffith study was it does not make sense for this district to go private busing, because it's the better way to go economically to do it with our drivers, and personally, our drivers care. They've proved they cared over the years, and they do a good job, and they're economical, and I don't think there
I appreciate your comments, and I know for a fact they do. Thank you.
Okay. Also, transportation, I heard mandatory, again, drug testing.
Yes.
Physicals, there are requests, are they not? Or are they also
required.
mandate?
They're part of the CDL licensing, they're required.
Now-
And they were in the budget last year, but in a different category.
But in different, okay, so we've been paying for the physicals. Now, does that mandate that we be the payer and not the applicant for the job?
No, it does not mandate that the employer pay for it, but it stands to reason that would be a condition of employment, because we would be required to do pre-employment testing, post-accident testing, and I think there are two other categories, John. Random and reasonable suspicion. So it would stand to reason that we would be responsible for that expenditure.
Okay, and Bill, I also heard you make mention, and I think you directed it out there to John, that we may pull back here on selling some buses in the event that we are plagued with early intervention busing. Is that going to be a truism or a reality?
Donna, I attended a meeting this morning, and I went to one last week. All the districts that were there are in the same spot that we are. We're just waiting to see and trying to figure out exactly what the cost is going to be. We don't know where that is right now. They're having another meeting to talk about the different service providers, and I'll explain a little bit more about that on Thursday night, but it could in fact come to pass as early as July 1. And when you look at the time of year that we're in and the potential for that coming about, it will be a serious concern.
Busing 3 and
serious.
5-year-olds, yes, that's a serious concern for more reasons than just money. John or Bill, how many buses are you looking at maybe holding in abeyance until we get a directive?
Right now, we have 109 active buses. We have, John, about 20 spares, which are really just that, spares to be used in a pinch. We'd be dropping down to approximately 80, 85 buses. So how many we're holding in abeyance, my recommendation to John was, he's already developed the list. We're ready to publish that and request proposal or quotes on that from interested parties. My recommendation is that we wait until October 1 at the earliest to publish that, until we can see what's going to happen with early intervention, until we can see what's happening with the rider contract and how our portion fits in. To go out over the summer months and offer those buses for sale, only to turn around and say, oh gee, I wish we had, in September, I wish we had kept 3 of those for early intervention or something. So my recommendation is that we wait until October 1 to make those available for sale.
Would most school districts be looking for buses
We have
now
already,
and in the
we have, well, see, that's the problem. We have already had a number of calls expressing interest. We will have no trouble selling those buses, whether we sell them now or we sell them in October.
Bill, I don't,
market determined?
we're going to have to ask Judy to check on this, but it would seem to me that Dennis and I were talking about this earlier, that the state, even though they do some unusual things, would not require us to begin early intervention once the school year started. That the likelihood would be that that would be something that would shake out this summer before we'd have to do it in the fall.
No, because the program for early intervention is not a normal school year program that goes throughout the whole year. It's a
Right.
full year program.
And you think they would come after a school year has already begun to tell you to start the program?
That's the concern. And that's the worry.
This is an ongoing program that's currently funded from the state to the IU.
Right from the state to the
And they're now
intermediate.
saying it's a school district responsibility. They underfunded it last year, and now it's our responsibility.
But the other concern is that the school district budgets need to be passed by June 30th, so. you know,
That's what all the districts said at the meeting.
That's right.
And their budgets will be passed by June 30th, too.
Correct.
Have
That's
they done it
correct.
every year? I don't think so.
A little later.
That's unbelievable.
They can stop the clock, we can't.
Right.
Never.
Just a point, if we could get a legal opinion, and before anybody laughs at me, I want a legal opinion of the worst possible thing that could happen to us if we chose not to obey a state mandate that was not funded. And I say that because I fear this early intervention, and before I'm accused of having ice water in my veins, I had a 3-year-old with Kawasaki disease that would have qualified for this early intervention program. He started over in T1 when Judy was a principal over there. He would have qualified, and there's no way that I as a parent would want to take my special needs child and dump him on the system for somebody else to pay for any sooner than he needed to be. And so, as a mother who would have been able to participate in that, I resent that program. And I want to know what would legally happen to us. I would like it from the solicitor, if the other board members will agree that I can have that, as to what would happen if we did not obey an unfunded mandate. You know, we went through this afternoon a tech prep overview in preparation of coming before this board eventually in these next 4 days. Here we are trying to figure out what to do with monies to deal with kids that are falling between the cracks, you know, the ones that aren't going to Harvard and the ones that aren't going home to marriages or whatever. And here we are trying to figure out what to do with 3- and 5-year-olds when we've got 14, 15, 16, 17-year-olds sitting in our face not knowing what to do with them. So this is like
Just a
pitiful.
clarification, Judy, the early intervention program, even though the state is trying to shift the burden, the financial burden, that is a federal,
Yes, and
that
it's
is a
already,
federal mandate as
it's already
opposed to a
occurring,
state
but it's
mandate.
operated by the intermediate unit.
Right.
Funding runs directly to them. And it's been operating successfully.
So I think at the very least, and we will check with Mr. Potash,
What
it would
would happen?
probably be in violation of the civil rights of those children right off
But
the
Donna,
bat.
expect that the dollar impact, the state dollars in next year's budget is $12.9 million, almost $13 million.
Okay.
That's the small piece of the pie, if you're talking about playing buck with the state on mandates. Because they have the power to declare us all sorts of inadequate and take over control. And-
Well, they already have.
But I understand, but I'm talking about they can take over
They
the
have
sport. But I'm saying that the $13 million that they give us is gonna be the small piece of the liability when we get the legal opinion.
Well, I think we
But
need to-
we ought to get
Next
it.
Thursday.
Fine.
Isn't it
We'll
Judy?
hit it
The
then.
I'll
police
be talking
department
about this a little
is
bit
being done
further.
My
Thursday,
apologies for
and-
belaboring it, I'll be back.
Yes.
And I don't think it's in the budget anyway.
End of my questions, Mr. Redcamp.
Other board questions?
Can I ask Dennis? During the course of the 93-94 fiscal year, there was a lot of bond refinancing. I know that in the last transaction I asked regarding, I guess it was $800,000 in bond proceeds
Yes.
that would be placed in the active budget for 93-94.
That's
Could
correct.
you tell me during that fiscal year, is that the total dollars that was entered into that budget, or are there additional bond proceeds that took place during the course of this refinancing?
There were others that had taken effect earlier in the fiscal year.
But that took place once we entered the 93-94 fiscal year.
Yes, and all those savings will become part of the fund balance. That's really why we even have the $1.5 million savings, or $1.5 million fund balance.
Well, what was the total of the bond proceeds during the course of the fiscal year?
That I can go back and get for you.
Okay, because I know we had a minimum of 800,000, I figured it was well over $1 million. What was the beginning cash balance? We had a cash balance of this past fiscal year of 2.9.
That's correct, but as you know, as I said earlier, we use that, some districts use that as a separate, they throw that into a capital reserve. We always use that as part of our revenue for the succeeding year.
Okay, but we began with 3 million and we added whatever we got from the bond proceeds. Is this the same as the budget reserve, or is there an additional budget reserve amount within last year's budget?
No, this is our only budget reserve.
This is the budget reserve.
Right.
So it's 3, and we're ending with 1.5. We're carrying over almost 1.6.
Right, if we hadn't been hit with those, the assessment appeals that we're paying out over the next, we paid the first installment out this year, we're paying them out over 3 years. So that's what's necessitated lowering it down to the 1.6.
But basically, though, we did spend most of the budget reserve that we began with last year. And we're basically coming out with what the bond proceeds would have brought
Yes,
in.
more or
Any way
less.
you want to look at
Yeah,
it. Or we
that's
spent the
true.
bond proceeds and...
Right, the assessment appeals have dug into those proceeds.
If you looked at just the savings from refinancing, if you look at it by object, 800 is a key one. And if you look at the budget for this year, for the current fiscal year, it's $5.2 million. If you look at the estimated revenues, it's in round figures $3.9 million. That you can focus in on as to what the money was that we saved from refinancing last year.
Unfortunately, Ralph, I don't think the taxpayers are really going to consider all those benefits when they see the budget that we're presenting. I mean,
The budget's ugly this year.
we have done a lot of
But I'd rather
creative
see it with those
financing.
savings than not. I'm sorry, go ahead.
And I'd like to say that with all the comments that have been made here, unfortunately, we can argue about whether the state's at fault or whether adding new schools is the problem or whether it's the cost of salaries. But year after year, it keeps coming down to the taxpayer having to constantly pay the bill for whoever's to blame. And I would personally like to put the request in early that we consider the May 11th date that's been set for the preliminary budget being set back to give us more time to address this budget, given the fact that it was not presented to us until yesterday, and because of the consequences that this budget would have for the community. So you can put that forward, you can discuss it at any other time if you want for consensus with the other board members. But I would like to see us roll up our sleeves and take a little bit more time, or better yet, and rather than micromanage the budget, I would like to suggest that the administration take another look at the budget to see what can be done to match up our expenditures with the resources of this community. And thank you. That's all I have to say.
I agree that this is going to be a tough budget. May 11th is a date. I think that we were focusing on the May budget session, the work session. We have to pass the preliminary 30 days before the final. The final's got to be passed in June.
June 30th, by June 30th.
We might be able to move the 11th a few days, but only a few days. But I will agree that we need to look at this very hard. And I think that as we get into the next couple budget sessions, let's see where we're at and let's see where we're going. And decide when we're going to actually pass I think come next Thursday, a week from Thursday, we're going to know real well whether we're going to be ready to pass it on the 11th and go into a final in June, or whether we have to delay it. But we can't delay it more than a week, or we're legally bound.
Well, we would have to call a special meeting to
And-
approve
and-
the final budget.
And I
That's what we would be
anticipate
dealing with.
that if we have issues we will call additional sessions, and it's been typical that we've called additional sessions as we present information to the board, to the administration. They come back to us, and we will do that again this year. And how that schedule works out, I'm still pegging the 11th as the probable date for preliminary, but by next week, Thursday, we'll have a much better idea. And I'm not gonna rush it. I don't believe in rushing it. I agree.
Okay.
Ralph, I'm sorry, you're not done?
I just.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Vicki.
Is there any reason why the audience can't take the regular preliminary, the 35 or 33-page one?
It's not ready tonight. We don't have, they're gonna be ready in the morning. And they can pick them up and they'll be available next Thursday. But they're not physically copied today, that's the
You
reason.
mean these here?
Unfortunate.
No,
the little
no, that's the
ones.
big one.
The pink one?
The pink
Okay.
one.
It's the similar to the pink one, and the pink one I showed earlier is last year's pink one.
Okay.
And there'll be another one like it available in the morning or next Thursday at 7:30.
It's coming.
At no cost. Yeah, it's coming
2 days
Thursday
from
now. Yeah, 2 days from now.
Thank you.
Or tomorrow at your office, mid-morning.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Tom?
I had a question for Dennis. Dennis, if we go back to page 2 on current real estate taxes,
Yes,
the $64,088,000 right there.
yes.
Could you, I think you said it earlier, but maybe you could repeat it for me. As far as the real estate assessment appeals, what kind of number would we have been looking at as revenue if industry wanted to appeal and won? What kind of number would we have had to start with? How
Right,
much of
we
an
had
impact did their winning their appeals have on us in that?
Over almost $1.6 million.
1.6, so, okay.
About it,
In this year?
But the
And-
problem
this
is you
year.
have to make that,
We had to make that up, so that really ends up almost being, we had to make up 3.2 million. 1.6 to get us back to 0, and another 1.6 to move ahead.
Okay.
So in effect, Tom, we're really looking at about 12 mils,
Well,
just on assessment
That's
appeals.
typical for a normal revenue growth year. And the funny thing is that new growth is going on.
New growth is going on, but assessment
But the
appeals
assessment
are
appeals
going
is
on.
tearing us down.
Right. I
And if
think-
we
and
did
I-
away with the
right.
assessment appeals,
Yes.
I think
this
the
budget
public
would be a
really,
lot different
the
thing.
public really does need to be aware. Are all the appeals that are going on, especially with industry, and that industry is winning, they're winning their appeals, I don't know about daily, but often.
And the ugly thing is that there's a whole stack of them in the row. It says next year's gonna be just like this. But the good news is you're gonna run out of big industries to do that.
Right.
And they're reassessing, which levels the floor. Because I got news for you, for every guy that appeals because he's low, there's a guy out there that's high, but he ain't going to his lawyer to ask to appeal.
your point's a good one.
And realistically, the people that are under-assessed are not going out there, and the way all that's gonna work is the assessment. And I think we all read in the paper, the assessment started. And that's what equalizes the field. But I think in reality, we're looking at one more year. But by one more year, the big players are gonna be done. I mean, we've got them in the pipeline now. The big players are gonna be done after a year, and by the time that plays out, reassessment will have kicked in, and we got one more ugly year,
But trust
revenues-wise.
me, Ralph, there are many big players still holding back.
I understand, and I know one of them.
But aren't many of these on a 3-year tax credit plan that the board,
Well, we
started
hope-
about 2
Yeah.
years ago?
We hope to settle them, but there's a number that are still out there, Mr. Sherrod, that have not
I know that,
come to
but-
trial or not come to settlement as of this
But
date.
aren't a large percentage of these reassessments actually having their tax credit obligations split into 3 different fiscal years?
This 6
I know the
million,
board
this
began that.
6 million I'm speaking of is just, you're right in one sense, but that 6 million is just what affects this 1 year.
That
There's
affects this
additional,
year, but many of those have 1 more year or 2 more years of getting their credit.
and that's what I explained,
refunded.
and that's what I explained to you is bringing down our fund balance.
But
That
we're not
money
saying
I already
1 more
have.
year. We're only.
For reassessment.
We're doing 1/3.
The bad effect is gonna be one more year. because a lot of things happen over 2 or 3, but the combination of the big guys getting in the market and reassessment, we got 1 more year of real bad stuff. And there may be another year, but next year is the one to worry about.
Mr. Reckcamp's talking about additional reassessments, Mr. Shar. That's not, yeah,
But
that's what he's
what
referring
percentage of fees
to.
actually settled last year? You know, because I know that there was a whole bunch of them that went through, and it was just a matter of, rather than paying them back, they were gonna go on a credit system, and therefore we'd be writing off what was.
That's what I spoke to earlier, that almost $1 million that I'm holding is for those credits that we owe over the next 3 years.
Well, that's just an aspect of it that I didn't know.
Right, accounting-wise, I'll have to show them on my balance sheet as a future liability.
And how much, yes, how much is a future liability beyond what we're.
Right, it's
crediting
gonna be
now?
almost $1 million.
But I think we shouldn't lose Tom's point that if we didn't have the assessment appeals, we would be looking at roughly the equivalent of 12 mils worth of revenue to help offset expenses. And we just don't have that.
That's unbelievable.
And that's the ugliness of this year's budget, that difference, 12 million.
Yeah. It's a big one.
Ralph, you said that reassessment has started, but but there's, what end in sight do you have? I mean, what are you looking at as an end in sight for reassessment?
Once you do the reassessment, 2 things are happening. The economy's picking up, and the business has been the big hurt. As the economy picks up, businesses have less of an incentive to reassess because their value goes up, and they don't have as much to gain. And when the reassessment occurs, we equalize everything. And they don't have anywhere to go, because when it's equalized, and what's more, when they equalize it, they're putting it on the computer, so you don't have to take 5 years to do a reassessment next time. And out in the western part of the state, because they have it on the computer, they do it every year at a reasonable cost, and they keep everybody equal. And that's all that, when you talk about assessed valuation, what you can really deal with is it fair? And putting it on the computer allows you to keep it fair regularly without waiting 15 years and then spending 5 to get it redone.
I have another question for Dennis or Alan. On page 1 of this, of the sticker book, if we talk enrollment, I just did some real rough math, but I just would ask if you would agree with this. Our current enrollment's around 11,597. That averages out to somewhere about $7,300 per student. Is that close? I did that real quickly. If we're gonna have a projected enrollment of 12,037, again, rough math, that would bump it up to about 7,750 students. Did you do any kind of numbers there, average per student?
No, we didn't do a computation.
Okay. Could you do that to just some quick, because that's
Sure.
where I came up with an increase of about $450 per student per year. And I'd
Okay.
like for you all who might do it a little bit better, just to give me an idea.
Are you basing that, Tom, on budget to budget or estimated to budget?
No.
Estimated to budget.
Okay.
We will do that for you.
Sure.
Okay.
And
Tom, the risk of doing estimated to budget
Okay, let's do it
is
budget.
the estimated, no,
No.
the estimated to budget, the estimated does not include $1.5 million in budgetary reserve.
Okay.
Yeah, that's,
Budget does.
But
And that's the
just,
difference.
but I think
The
we should
$1.5
try to
million.
get some kind of
It's not
ballpark.
real.
it's a crude estimate.
Right.
It allows us to look at the total dollars behind each student's education. It's a little bit crude in the sense that we have things in this budget that don't go to the education of kids that go to our schools, such as the rider contract. But so does every school district have those non-public school costs. It's a way to allow us to compare our costs with other school districts and factor out enrollment.
Right, and I think it could just give us a good idea, because we know for the most part that right now we're at somewhere between 7,000 and 7,500 per student. Okay, with this proposed budget, we're probably somewhere between 7,500 and 8,000, somewhere in that range. And I think that, the public needs to know that.
Okay, while we're at that, let's put out the debt service cost per pupil.
Debt service cost per pupil, we can do that
What
too.
is
do
the
that.
real cost on the debt that we have in this district?
pardon me,
The debt service
per pupil.
per
Okay,
pupil cost we have in this district.
That should be easy.
sure.
But, and I think it's fair to add on from that table, 12 that we got from the IU that, I think it was lower, the top, when we were comparing other districts, the number of $10,745 per student, that was the, as far as districts nearby, they were the highest, I think.
Yeah, I think the highest in the county at the time the IU did the survey was spending about $3,000 per pupil. And if we expended that amount of money, I think we would be adding $40 million to our budget.
3,000 more.
3,000 more.
You missed more.
3,000 more than we, yes, thank you.
Mr. Allen? Yes. You were going to ask the
It's not
question
my fault.
before, I was coming to you.
Tom asked it.
Tom asked it?
Yes.
Are there
Thank
any other board questions, Terry?
There's no salaries in here other than community relations. There's no plant operations or transportation. Are they going to be covered under you, Fred?
Yep.
But you don't handle Ken's, or
Yeah, I do.
you do? All right.
Probably Ken shouldn't have been there. I'll say it for you, Fred.
When, can I have a breakdown in hours or full-time equivalent persons of overtime hours?
For any particular category of people?
All of the above? Plant operations and transportation are, and I guess support staff. All the hourly that where it impacts the budget in dollars.
Sure.
Thank you.
If I may, Terry, with ours, there is reimbursement. For an example, if we have a Saturday overtime at Penn Brook, and we have an outside group there, that will show as an expenditure, but you won't necessarily see the repayment by the group that had to pay the hourly rate. So, just so you understand that going in.
We can talk about that.
Can you tie that in or whatever?
Yes.
Impacting dollars, really is what
Okay.
Thank
Now,
you.
other questions? Terry?
not right now.
Okay. Now, I think the rules of the game are, if, as we get to Thursday and Tuesday, when we have major presentations from the administration, if they can get the answers to the questions that we've asked tonight, they'll incorporate them into their presentation Thursday and next Tuesday. If not, the following Thursday, May 5th.
I'd like to suggest we will get them to you as quickly as possible, but these gentlemen and lady are also running a school district of 11,000 students, and there's more to do than just gather the answers to these questions. So if you can just allow us, we will get you the answers in a timely fashion, but not necessarily tomorrow.
Sure.
Okay.
I do have one more question, I'm sorry.
Any others, Terry?
One more question. On community relations. We have technical services, Ken?
Office of School Community Service, Technical Services, yes.
And printing services there, and printing services in adult ed, and technical services there.
Yes.
Are these ever put out for bid?
I think I would answer that two different ways. Do we usually or often get 3 or more prices for a job? Yes. Is there a compilation of many printing jobs advertised in legal notices for bid? No.
So it's an unofficial process?
Yes, it's an ongoing
Okay.
unofficial process
So
where we get several prices for a job and give the job to the best price.
Is technical services something that we can bid? That we would want to bid? Is that like
Most
a
techni-
lawyer or
Well,
an
most
architect or whatever?
Most technical services would be difficult to bid. I'm thinking of such things as mail advertising and the mail services. I'm thinking of typesetting costs, which are hourly per job. I guess you could help me understand how we could do that efficiently, and I would be happy to talk with you about that, but that would be more difficult than the printing jobs.
Right. And legally, Mrs. Perkel, that's a service and does not have to be bid.
Right, and it also has to do with the dollar amount.
Yeah, Ken, what's the typical
That tends
dollar
to be,
amount?
that tends to be, get 3 quotes and go versus a bid, which is over $10,000 for a
Right.
piece, regardless of what he'd like to do. If it's over $10,000 for that piece, he's gotta do it.
Right.
That's a requirement of law. But they
what's the
tend to be small.
What's the calendar run?
Pardon?
What's the calendar run?
If I recall correctly, the printing of the calendar last year was approximately 5,800. It's my recollection, I don't have that number in front of me.
And that's, the design of it is separate from the printing of it?
That's right, that's printing from camera-ready copy. The design, which would be the typesetting that preceded the printing, would be in purchase technical services. But you know that Dennis and you and I have had conversations about bidding printing jobs. You know that we're committed to begin to do that. Dennis and Alan and I had conversations about that within the last month. Dennis and I have talked about that more recently, and we're preparing, as we promised you we would, we're preparing to move in that direction.
But thank you, I'm appreciative of that. Technical services wouldn't fall in that?
No, it would not.
Okay. Thank you.
Are there other board questions? Okay, for the items that were on the agenda for tonight, the overall budget presentation by Dr. Alco, the revenue, and the expense items that were discussed tonight, if there are any audience questions, I would ask that you be recognized and come up and state your name and municipality and speak. Do we have any people that would like to address the board tonight? Yes, sir.
My name is Bob Graziano. I'm from Tolmanson. I have a few, hopefully short questions. What is the present number of faculty right now?
Professional positions or
Teaching position, right.
that would be classroom teachers, guidance counselors, nurses. The bargaining unit would be about 780, Fred?
781.
781.
Okay, and you said that there'd be 29 new teachers in that same category?
Same category, yes, sir.
Okay. It was mentioned that about 80% of the budget is salary. Any chance we could get one of those nice graphs of how the other 20% breaks down?
Yes, I'm going to do that, Mr. Graziano, for Mrs. Mengel, and
Okay, good.
and it will be in your booklet. In the booklet, the preliminary budget, the graph will be in there.
Okay, good. And also, as far as that other 20% is concerned, which I'm guessing is somewhere in the $18 to $20 million range, has there ever been in this district any kind of cost savings incentive program where people could make suggestions and maybe get a rebate of part of the savings or anything like that? Something to get both the faculty and even the students involved in trying to save the district money.
Good idea. So like a tax saving Renaissance program?
What was that?
No, there has not been.
I think that's a
Not to
good
my
idea.
knowledge.
Many corporations have that. and-
It happens. There's not an incentive. People make suggestions.
Well, whenever you add an incentive to something, I think you see an increase in the number of savings. Termites was mentioned. Is a regular termite inspection part of the IPM? Do we pay for that now?
No, it's not.
So do we wait until there's damage seen
No,
somewhere?
we wait until we see them visible, and this is the time of the year where we have swarming. And once we see swarming or we see actual action by termites, if you will, eating of wood, that's when we react to that.
Is there any kind of annual inspection at all as part of the IPM? Nothing at all?
Not for termites.
Question on data processing in the transportation department. Is there a reason why that's separated from the other data processing facilities that we have?
It's an independent, the transportation data processing is an independent network from the administrative data processing system. And as a result, it's budgeted under transportation.
Okay, is there a reason that either take the present capacity and the administrative, combine it, or increase it to bring the two together to save money?
The administrative data processing system is a standalone system, whereas the administrative data processing is a digital fax mainframe-based system. They're two entirely different. They can be networked together. They're not currently. They're capable of being, but the data processing is a mainframe operation. transportation is a PC-based network.
No, I'm not sure that answers my question.
Well, maybe to answer the question even further, the software that runs through the transportation department is not available on digital as of yet.
Okay. How old is the VAC system that we have?
Less than a year old.
It was upgraded to last year's budget
We
significantly.
just upgraded, and the final upgrades were done, the major upgrade was done in September, the finals were done in December.
Is there any concern about digital equipment keeping that upgraded, considering the condition that they're in?
We've had almost 10 years' worth of association with digital equipment, and have been very, very pleased with the service and the maintenance on that equipment.
Donna, I'd like to thank you for challenging, or at least talking about challenging some of these unfunded mandates. I think we need both the school boards and townships and boroughs and these small governments to start doing that instead of just laying down and letting them roll over us. By the same token, I think the states need to start doing the same thing to the federal government. I think the goose is getting cooked. I'm getting tired of Harrisburg, I'm getting tired of Washington, and hopefully I'm not the only one, but at some point this stuff has to stop.
You're right. Thank you, Bob. Appreciate it.
One other thing is, I haven't heard any of these numbers, but in gathering together some of the numbers and use a little calculation, it appears to me that you're talking somewhere around, if we only went with real estate taxes, a $27 million increase, about $7.6 million.
27 and a half.
27 and a half.
At the current, at the budget as it sits right now.
Well, I'd adjust that down a little bit. You heard some minor
That's why I said
flash.
27.
I'd say about 27.2 right now.
Give me the benefit of the doubt, I said 27.
And there isn't a board member here who's happy with that.
Well, I understand that, and I'm sure there's nobody out here or in the community that'll be happy. Ralph, you had some numbers a few weeks ago about earned income tax, and I think it was 8.6 million, a half
it's
per percent. You're still talking only 3-4 mil drop in real estate taxes at best, and I certainly wouldn't be happy about that. So I appreciate all your work and hope that you can pare this down as much as possible. Thanks.
Thank you.
Todd Fisher, Lansdale. I just wanted to make a few comments. I guess we've heard a lot about reassessment tonight, and there's been a lot of numbers that have been thrown around. I made a note that Dr. Elko first mentioned that this was a crippling problem and mentioned a figure of 1.6 million. A few minutes later, Mr. Kelly throws out a number of somewhere around $800,000 that reassessments cost us, I guess, in this year. And then a few minutes ago, someone mentioned a figure of $6 million worth of reassessment. So I'm not sure exactly what the costs were in this past budget, what they're going to be in the actual settled cases, how that is going to impact this proposed budget here, and whether those cases, do they have a 1, 2, or 3 year time period to work themselves out, or are they on an installment basis?
Mr. Fisher, let me start with the $6 million figure. The $6 million figure is in assessed value. When the properties were reassessed, they reduced their assessed value by $6 million. That in turn equates, based on our millage, to the $1.6 million. The $800,000 I referred to is the money that's put away to take care of the assessment appeals that were settled currently and installment plans over 3 years. There are still a number of large assessment appeals out there. Hopefully, we can settle them and work out installment plans over 3 years. In some cases, the companies have gone bankrupt and have gone back, and we have no choice. I mean, their lawyers will not settle for installments. We have to come up with the money up front. So, I mean, it's a it's kind of a game that you have to play.
And one other figure we threw out in terms of the assessment appeals was the point that Mr. Clements made, was that if we did not have the assessment appeals, we'd be looking at about a little over $3.3 million in new revenues, which is about 12 mils worth of new revenue that we can't count on.
Effect on budget, 12 mils.
So it is confusing and will continue to be.
Well, I'd like to see something on a pro forma basis as to what the effects are projected to be this year, next year, going forward. If, I mean, you must have done some kind of computations like that if you said that you put something on the books as a
Right.
liability. So
I can do it for those that have been settled. We really can't discuss the ones that are still out there.
Okay, I'd like to see something in that respect. And since we are talking about, on the expenditure side, with salaries comprising 4 out of every $5 that we spend, and a proposed 3.2% cost of living adjustment, I'd just like to say that according to the statistics that I'm aware of, 2.7 was the, I guess, December to December cost of living, and you're probably using a June to June or July to July, something.
In actuality, the 3.2% for the teachers has been something that the board had on the table for a year and a half. And it reflects cost of living and the fact that we're asking them to give back. But in fact, February to February, which is the last numbers that are around, for the Philadelphia area, it's 3%.
Okay, I was referring to a
Cost of living-
CPI.
Yes, but cost of living, CPI for Philadelphia, February to February. It comes out monthly, and we're watching that one like a hawk. It's 3% from February to February, which is the latest number that's out.
I'd just like to go on the record, along with probably everybody else, and say that the teachers have had over and above any cost of living adjustment that is reasonable, and that they ought to live by the same rules that the rest of us do.
Amen.
Agree.
Going back to zero.
I wanted to take a little bit of an exception to Mr. Hartenstein's comment that $1.5 million for the rider contract was going to save $2.5 million. I had a hard time buying that argument initially. I'm still not sold on that fact. When I look at your numbers saying that we're going to spend another $1.4 million in buses in this proposed budget, now we won't have to do that. I'm just wondering how long you're taking. It seemed to me that you were taking all of the cost in the year that you'd have to purchase the buses. What is the useful life of a bus in the school district?
We have a turnover rate that the board accepted last year, and on average about 9 years.
About 9 years. I was thinking probably 10 or something like that. So I would propose that the cost of $1.4 million for new buses might be $140. Give you the benefit of the doubt with financing, say $200,000. That throws most of your savings out. So I wouldn't be as bold to make a statement that spending 1.5 would save 2.5.
That was the buses next year. But the other thing that was part of it, and the study was produced some months ago when the board decided to go. But part of that was that we exceeded our capacity at the bus garage. And there was going to be major renovations. And it's not just buses, it's people and it's facilities that we also had to deal with. And it is true that a lot of it is capital type costs. But the net, when you looked at the dollars,
I might agree with you that this is a good idea. I might, having just been exposed to it today.
If you would get a hold of Bill Hartenstein, he can get you the study that we had a consultant come in and make a presentation, and they laid out in sort of gory detail why it made sense to do what we're doing.
I would still take exception that it sounded like the statement said we were saving $1 million there by taking this contract, saving $1 million this year, and I'd, again,
I
take
think
exception to that.
the real point I was trying to make is that in the first year, had we kept all of that transportation in-house, the board would have had to go out for another bond expenditure just to buy those additional buses to transport the kids, given those two new schools and the new schedule.
At fairly low interest rates, though, that may or may not have been attractive. Finally, I would just like to say that I'm opposed to an earned income tax. I moved to this district 6 years ago to escape the high income taxes of the Penridge School District and the West Rock Hill Township in particular. I'd hate to see my reason for coming to the district removed, and I don't think that we should even entertain the idea just because everybody else is doing it. So I'd like you to take a very long, hard look at the earned income tax before we start, before we consider that, because I think basically what it would end up doing is basically shifting the burden from those who own real estate and the ones who are going to would benefit from this would be the retirees with unearned income, interest, dividends, pensions, Social Security, and the people who would be picking up the tab are those with wages from either self-employment or a job. And I think basically I know I'm being taxed to death as it is, especially when somebody making the same income coming in those items is paying a lot less income taxes than I am, because they're not paying a Social Security tax. A lot of times on a state level, they're eligible for tax forgiveness of their income taxes. I think these people have gotten enough benefit. I think that the working fellow needs a break. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there other questions from the audience? Yes. Adrian?
One of my questions was answered. I saw this 0 mils here. I was going to go out and buy several buckets of champagne, but then within the last 4 or 5 seconds, I know, Ralph. Within the last 4 or 5
Maybe after you heard the figure that we just talked about, you still want to go out and buy several buckets.
No. And I'm not foolish enough to believe what I read either. So I figured somebody hit the wrong button and forgot a 2 in front of that 0.0. So to find out it's at 27 mils. I don't want to get in on a earned income tax or the raise in millage. I think the scenario has been set both by the county and the school district. You put in an earned income tax, then the senior citizens that are standing out there with a small metal rake and filling the trash bags full of dollar bills will be saved the property tax. However, the county comes along, and hopefully if they continue the way they normally do and take several years, it won't be too bad. But if they move rather rapidly with their computer systems, if they can run them, then there will be a reassessment. So the property taxes will go up probably in a year or 2 through the county and the reassessment. I don't believe will reassess and lower them. Then the district will benefit from the county reassessment when it is finished and can say, it wasn't us, Either way, the scenario looks really good. If an earned income tax goes in here, at the last meeting and prior to that, Mr. Bowman and a few other people mentioned that the property taxes would be lowered. I will not believe that unless I see it in writing, distributed through the Public Relations Office to every resident in the district. I think to intimate or lead people to believe that their property taxes will be lowered if there is an income tax put into to this district and not have it materialize would be morally wrong to do that. So I think if there is going to be an income tax, earned income tax, put into this district eventually, prior to July 1st or July 2nd, then if the property taxes, as has been said, will go down, there should be a dollar figure put on that, and it should be made pure and simple and something that someone can hold on to. I personally am sick and tired of listening to people say, if we do this, this will happen. We do this and nothing happens. So when you decide to make these moves, I'd like to see most of them in black and white. Secondly, according to this budget, there will be some drastic cuts, or should be. 80%, of course, is teachers' salaries. But the other 20, pardon?
All salaries.
All salaries. Oh, good, Fred, I almost forgot that point. A point. But let me finish here. So when you decide to cut, I wish you would do me a favor. I enjoy old movies, old reruns, but with quality stars. I'm tired of the reruns this district has done. You raise the millage at 27, you knock a couple of things out, you bring it down to 22 or 20. A few weeks later, the average person says to me, for heaven's sake, what are you talking about? Look what it was. Well, what it is what it should have been in the beginning. So I'm tired of the games we play. And I want the board, or rather the administration, to do me a big favor in 1994. Do not cut the sports, particularly at the junior high level, and definitely not the music, particularly the Suzuki. But the sports, you will have the people out, they will bring their children, and then you will, I can give you the scenario. Cynthia Loudon could make a mint by scripting this. What they will do will be stand up and read a statement full of pathos, and you think the end of the world is coming. And in case you and the audience and the board and the administration has not caught this gem, the parent will stand up and say, did you see what he wrote that on? Having read this short statement. And it will be on the back of his varsity football letter. So in order to avoid all of this, pick yourself another category. Don't pick sports to cut in any way, shape, or form. And do not probably pick the band. I don't like to go into the auditorium, which you will need at that point. So pick yourself another category and do me a favor. And the other question I want to ask, which I would have forgotten if it hadn't been for Mr. Schmidt. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Has there been a figure set on the administrative salary increase this board will allow in this budget? I'm not asking for salary figures.
I believe that in Dr. Elko's statement, there is a 3.2% increase in there for the teachers. And there is also a 3.2% increase for all other personnel. Administrators, bus drivers, secretaries, everybody. That's what's in the budget as it stands right now. 3.2% for all personnel.
Across the board?
Across the board.
Right. Well, I do appreciate, and also, I know how busy everybody is running the school district.
Thank you.
We're almost up, Adrian.
I know. And, right.
Yes.
And I would like very much to be able to pick up what is necessary to be picked up instead of having to come back and the next day or the following week. It would have been a help to the people in the audience tonight to have had the pink, blue, green, or sage green, whatever color it is, sheets here. I think that you have a very, very strong staff of volunteers, and somebody must know how to push a button on some Xerox machines. I would hope that maybe you could use some volunteers.
Mrs. Hanahan, that was really my fault. We were making changes up till yesterday, and while we got the books out to the board, my secretary just got to, it's back there ready to be run, and it'll be run first thing in the morning.
And I don't think you have to maybe run as many as you normally would think. I think if that you do have more people than you have booklets, I think people in the audience would be willing to share, just so that there would be some that would be made available. I think the public would appreciate it.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Are there any other questions from the
And
audience?
don't forget those cuts, no sports.
Hearing none, we'll meet you again at 7:30 on Thursday. Thank you.
Guest room. According to the North Penn High School profile, 71% of our 1993 graduating class went on to continue their education after leaving high school. I think we would find the numbers for this class are similar. That 71% is an impressive number. It says a lot for our high school and a lot for our students. I recommend using all planned holidays other than Good Friday and Memorial Day to make up our snow days. And I strongly urge the board to consider waiving the 180-day rule for the seniors, allowing them to graduate on Friday, June 17th. Since this request is based on us hopefully having no more snow days, I would also like to suggest, as Dr. Elko had stated, that you hold off on a final decision regarding graduation until next month's board meeting. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Just as a comment, traditionally the school announces on April the 1st or thereabouts the actual graduation date for seniors. As we will be off that day, it will now be approximately April the 4th, which will make that decision. So hopefully, if he takes care of us up there, we're not going to have any more snow, and then we'll decide at that point.
You see, it will be our luck that we'll have snow after April 1st this year.
I think you've just cursed us right now. Anyone else wishing to speak? Zish?
Connie Aish, 203 Pioneer Drive, Lansdale. I'm coming to the school board again for two reasons. I guess I should state that I'm the mother of Michael Aish, who was taken out of school because he was poisoned by Durspan, the pesticide. And although I'm still planning, so the two reasons are, although I'm still planning on sending Michael back to school as of March 1st, I requested January 20th, the last school board meeting, and in writing to Dr. Elko as of January 28th, that proper testing be done by a qualified environmental laboratory, and I suggested maybe Apex Labs. But after receiving phone calls from the mothers of the children in Michael's class, I discovered that this week there were 5 children just in one day sent to the nurse with headaches, and they were the same children that had experienced symptoms like Michael's before. Each of these children were on the previous list, like I said, of children that had repeated symptoms while Michael was being poisoned at school. Then one mother said she smelled a pesticide-like smell in the classroom on Monday while her child was being taken out of school for a headache and low-grade fever. So after speaking with the 5 mothers, I discovered that 3 of them had had headaches, usually after lunch they started at school, on 2 or more days. And then their symptoms were not caught by the other people in their family. And they also recovered at home. When they went home, they got better. When they went back to school, they got worse. The other 2 children had milder symptoms. After phone calls to the superintendent on February 15th and 16th, Dr. Elko stated that Art Wood would be contacting the Montgomery County Health Department to see if they could test the school using the isopropyl alcohol sponge method, which I spoke about at the last meeting. But in the past, the Health Department Director, Robert Gage, has said that his ability to test is limited. They failed to provide timely and adequate testing before when I called, and therefore I believe the Health Department is not the agency to rely upon to give accurate answers. I suggest using Apex Environmental Inc. because I talked with the manager of occupational health and safety there, Diane Baxter, and she was a wealth of information and could arrange for testing either from the Rockville, Maryland office or their office in Reading. Number 2, I am aware that what I consider to be effective integrated pest management has not yet been implemented because one of the first steps in integrated pest management is cleaning and caulking affected areas. And I had the opportunity recently to use the facilities at the junior high. The bathroom there was one of the filthiest that I had ever seen, and a bathroom such as this is sure to attract insects. As I entered and left the bathroom, I also noticed a smell which smelled like bug spray to me. In addition, I have had reports from 3 different sources of ants in Montgomery Elementary. One child actually brought insects home in his lunchbox. I'm not a pest control specialist, but I've been able to rid my house of ants and fleas without using the organophosphates, which would attack my family's nervous system. I believe March 8th would be a good time to schedule a meeting to show the progress of the present IPM system and to allow the community to give its input as to how they believe the system is working. I would like to have the opportunity to allow guests with experience in implementing IPM to speak on how adjusting the plan would both make it more effective and less expensive. Some of the companies have said it does not have to be more expensive. My idea of IPM is not just not spraying, but rather using all of the non-toxic means available to control the insects. I'm requesting a few things in writing, which I do have trouble getting things from the school district in writing. But I'm giving you this letter, each member of the school board, and Dr. Elko and Art Wood, and I would like a response in writing, hopefully by next Tuesday, because I am hoping to send my son back to school as of March 1st. But I have not found the school district to be responsive in assuring me that it's a safe environment. And I do believe as a taxpayer I have a right to public education. And if we're still not satisfied by March 1st, I'm prepared to take stronger action. Thank you.
Thank you. Right there in the corner, June.
June Yolkowski, Tomenson Township. Seeing out here in the audience, it's amazing how things in this school district just seem to come round and round. I remember an evening back in the late 70s when we had almost an identical discussion on school holidays and the fact that a number of children and teachers had plans, including, I believe, a group of teachers and students who were going to Europe during Easter vacation. And while I don't recall how it was decided for that year, a policy was instituted at that time that from that year on, Easter vacation and any other school holidays during the year would be taken in a given order on the calendar if they were needed as snow makeup days. Somewhere along the line since then, that policy's been put aside. I'm very concerned about just how effective the 3 Easter days, if they are used as snow makeup days, will be. Dr. Elko, do you have any idea at this point how many teachers will be absent and how many students will be absent?
I have an idea. Yes, I do.
Would you like to share that?
I would certainly share that with you. Approximately 130 teachers out of 800 will be absent. They'll be covered with certified substitutes. On a typical day, we have 25 to 35 teachers absent. I believe it's 135, isn't it? Not just teachers, that would be all professional staff.
So that's out of 1,000.
I've had extensive conversations with the directors and principals regarding the effectiveness of instruction. We're very confident that instruction is going to be provided, Ms. Okowski.
Well, I wish
Our
I could.
teachers know that it will be an instructional day. It's not a play day. It's not a fun day. It'll be an instructional day.
And how many students will be absent, roughly? Do you have any idea?
I have no idea the number of students which will be absent.
Well, I'm deeply concerned, both as a taxpayer and as somebody interested in education, seeing our children do get a quality of education for the high dollars we're paying, that those days are quality education days and not just days being marked on a calendar so we can come up with the magic 180.
Again, I assure you, and out of almost 9,000 letters to parents, I received no phone calls. I would ask any board member if they received any phone calls from any extensive number of parents concerned that we would not be providing an effective program on those days.
None.
I don't think it's a problem.
Well, I'm also somewhat concerned, and I've heard this only second and third hand. I would like to see a copy of the letter that did go out directly. But I'm concerned if there is an attitude being fostered either by administration here or by teachers that it's perfectly all right for parents to take children out those days and just trot off to Disney World or wherever.
In fact, we've, Ms. Wachowski, we've taken the measure to, if the children will be gone, they need to notify us prior to so that they can receive their assignments. And it's not one of these things they wake up Monday and decide that they want to be off that week. They have to get it. And because we have the time between now and when school is for that week, we can line up our teachers that are going to be gone with the substitutes that are going to replace them so that the lesson plans can be transferred, complete lesson plans so that they know what will be taught that day, so that the quality of instruction will not change.
I would also like to clear up the rumor that you said you heard perhaps third hand. We have 8 board members present tonight. They're all parents and have children in the North Penn schools. Does any board member here feel that the letter that I sent to parents in any way suggests that you would keep your children home?
Not at all.
Well, I didn't mean suggesting keeping them home, but I just didn't
Or
want to...
encourage a vacation?
Not at all.
And will the teachers who are out be paid?
Arrangements will be made so that no teacher, teachers will be required and will work 185 days as per the contract that was in force before the expiration of this contract. As you know, employees have personal days available to them, and they will make up those days.
Teachers have personal days as well as...
All employees have personal days available to them. There's a certain number of personal days. They may have used them or not, but all of our employees will work their required days.
And how will the teachers who've used their personal days make up the time?
Well, they may be making up the time through the summer and next year doing curriculum work in which we would have paid them and now we wouldn't pay them. And some of those teachers may choose to be docked their salary for the day.
Okay. Well, I just hope that they are indeed quality days, and I hope that when the calendars draw up for next year, that this board goes back to a policy of having at least 5 snow days, because while this is an unusual year, Pennsylvania is not Miami Beach either, and I think there should be some snow days in the calendar.
I think this has been an extraordinary year, as anyone would admit, and it takes some extraordinary solutions, and it's not going, no solution is foolproof in this regard. I'm sure through conversations with board members that we're going to look seriously at next year's calendar and make some determinations and plan that if we have more snow days, we'll be able to handle them more effectively.
Well, I hope this doesn't come around again in another 10 years and we have the exact same discussion. And I guess I hope the next thing that doesn't come around is a move for the district to be selling elementary schools for surplus space.
That's another board's problems. Thank you.
There's one other matter I'd like to discuss, Mr. Bowman. I'm deeply concerned with the situation that was in the paper last week regarding the before and after school daycare program. I think no matter who's running this program, and as you know, I am not the fondest of Mrs. Shaw's methods of running programs, but no matter who runs it, I think if anything happens to a child, this district is ultimately responsible. And I don't think there's anybody here who wants the slightest risk to a child. And I'm very, very concerned if children are wandering around the buildings and the daycare employees are just waiting there, you know, hoping and assuming the children will show up. And if a child doesn't show, nobody knows where that child may have wandered off to. In the case in the paper, luckily the child got on the right bus, and luckily someone was home when he got home. But a 6-year-old could have wandered anywhere. He could have gotten off on the wrong bus, wandered into a strange neighborhood. He could have gotten home, found the door locked, and wandered around his own neighborhood, possibly being kidnapped, possibly being hit by a car, and possibly just wandered off into a strange area and been lost for hours or days. And I'm very, very concerned at the way this program is being run.
Thank you. We share your concern, and because of the possibility of litigation, I won't comment on that tonight. But thank you for your concern.
I would like to be stronger, except I don't want Mrs. Shaw to sue me, but I would like to, any board member who wants to speak to me privately about what I've seen and heard, I'd be glad to.
Thank you.
I've urged the board in the past to consider reopening this for bid, and at this time I would strongly urge them to reopen it again this year. Mrs. Shaw has had 3 years. That's a long run. She's making, in my opinion, a very enormous profit.
You will see that this summer.
And I also hope that if it is not a district-run program, that North Penn does seriously consider a dramatic raise in the $15 a day she's paying. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
And my name is William Woodburn, 508 Cherry Street, Lansdale. I'm the father of an 11th grade student. First, I'd like to thank the school board for giving my son the opportunity to be guided and to learn from Mr. Robert Schätzlein as wrestling coach at the North Penn School District in the high school. But I'd also like to express my disappointment that Robert Schätzlein has been forced to take his teaching skills and his many good qualities to Maryland because he's been passed over for several opportunities here in this school district. I realize this school board cannot micromanage the evaluation process of each student who comes in and each prospective teacher who comes into the district, but you do have a responsibility for the policy, the evaluation policy that is used to develop the criteria for accepting and rejecting applicants for teaching positions. You're also responsible for the quality of administrators who implement those policies. Just as some background, Mr. Schätzlein is a graduate of North Penn High School. He has lived in the community of the North Penn District for most of his life. He served for 6 years as assistant wrestling coach while he was a student at Temple University preparing to become a teacher. And during that time, he worked under the careful eyes of one of the most respected teachers in this district, Mr. Ed Clavon, where I'm sure Mr. Schätzlein gained many of his skills of dealing with young people. 2 years ago, he was given the opportunity to be head coach at the North Penn wrestling program, even though he was not offered a teaching job. He performed that job under the guidance of Dr. Juan Bond, who is responsible for all of the high school athletic programs, and I'm sure Dr. Bond would indicate that Mr. Schätzlein did a quality job. Before I moved down here to this district, North Penn District, I taught school for 13 years. During that period of time, I had the opportunity to work with 11 student teachers. I was involved in the Middle States evaluations of other school districts for their accreditation. I saw good teachers come into my district. I saw bad teachers come into my district. And invariably, good teachers had three qualities. One, they had a love to teach. They had a love to work with young people and to share with young people. Secondly, they wanted the people around them to succeed. And they found ways to take setbacks and misfortunes and turn them into positive tools to make that growth possible. And thirdly, they developed the discipline through a mutual respect and not through extortion of things like threatening grades, lowering grades, and things like that, but through mutual respect between the parties. During the opportunities I had to watch Robert Schätzlein work with young people in the wrestling practice room, at a very volatile wrestling match between two very close teams, or whether it's sitting in the hallway working with young people trying to understand a math problem that they couldn't get in their classroom. I saw Mr. Schätzlein demonstrate those three qualities over and over and over again. Mr. Schätzlein is going to be a quality teacher. Unfortunately, he's going to do it in Maryland, not here in our school district. In summary, Rob Schätzlein has demonstrated those three qualities, which is going to make him a good teacher. He was educated and trained to teach in one of the best school districts in the Commonwealth, if not in the United States, because he student taught at the North Penn School District. And lastly, Robert Schätzlein wanted to teach in his hometown, in his home school, to teach mathematics and to coach. What I'm asking from the board is I need to understand the policy and the criteria that was used to keep Mr. Schätzlein from becoming a teacher in our district. I need to understand that so that I can sit down with my son and turn this disappointment into what Rob would call a learning experience, something my son can grow from. I need to be able to sit down and talk with fellow parents and have them understand why Rob Schätzlein cannot teach in our school district. And if you can direct me and give me that information, I would greatly appreciate it. Again, I thank you for the 3 years that my son did have with Mr. Schätzlein. Thank you.
Mr. Woodburn?
Yes, sir.
The information you're asking for, the school district can't possibly give you personnel information about any employee. We can't give you evaluative information, good, bad, or indifferent. Nor could we sit here and tell you Mr. Schätzlein's strengths, weaknesses, characteristics. We couldn't do that about him or anyone else. I think you understand that. If you
No, I do understand that, Dr. Elko. I understand it in detail. I know what I think I'm asking you, what I know I'm asking you for, is the policy that the board has put in place, the evaluation policy, the criteria that was applied to all the candidates. All right, not the individual specifications on each candidate, but the litmus test, the things that you put your candidates through, and you hope to come out with the best quality persons to sit in the classroom and teach our young people. I'm not looking for specific instances of I know that's not right. I know you can't do that ethically.
I think we can talk in terms of generalities of the characteristics, but I can assure you that candidates that we have had here in our school district who have substituted for the school district are thoroughly reviewed and evaluated by more than one administrator, at the high school and by more than one central office administrator, in this case Dr. Venema, Mr. Schmidt, and at the high school several administrators. And through that process, the outcome that you wanted was not achieved, but I can tell you that it was a very, very thorough process. Perhaps more thorough than a candidate walking in off the street and being granted an interview and an evaluation of their resume. We have the benefit for any individual who's subbing for us as a day-to-day substitute or as a long-term substitute to be able to see that individual in a variety of settings. What I will arrange for you is Mr. Schmidt will call you or someone from our staff and talk about some of the general characteristics that we look for in a candidate for a teaching position in our school district.
That's what I'm asking for. I need to be able to sit down with my son and my friends and discuss it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Red shirt there?
My name is Bob Graziano. I'm from Towmenson. On February 9th, there was a column in the Reporter by a North Penn High School senior calling for the legalization of drugs. That column raises some serious questions in my mind. As a taxpayer, I sense that the dollars being spent in drug education programs may not be working here when one of our brightest students thinks this way. As a parent, I feel that the district may be failing to graduate responsible citizens who have a respect for the law. I have some specific questions that I would like answered. I'll read them and appreciate any comments that you might have. Number one, does the North Penn Drug Education Program teach anything other than an anti-drug message? Number two, has there been any investigation into whether any teachers in the high school or elsewhere in the district are influencing students about drug use or drug legalization? And number three, has there been or will there be any questioning of this student to determine where our drug education program may be failing? I believe we should take advantage of this public stance by one of our students to assure the community that you are concerned and how we might improve our drug education programs. I'd appreciate any comments that you might have.
One comment that I'd make, sir, is that I heard two of our senior class members speak tonight, and I'm very proud of them, and I'm very proud of the efforts of our senior class to present their position relative to the calendar in a very mature and thoughtful way. We have 700 to 800 seniors. I think that any one of those seniors is entitled to an opinion and to express their free speech rights in a local newspaper. We don't have to agree with that opinion, and I'm sure that there are many, many students and many people here that do not agree with that opinion. I don't see how the opinion of one student can be a reflection of a school district, a drug and alcohol program, all of the teachers. I think it's a quantum leap to make that kind of a generalization. I don't believe that any teacher in our system would be promoting the legalization of drugs. It is not part of our curriculum in any way. Our drug message is strongly anti-drug, and I think if you wait till after the meeting, these young ladies from our high school would talk with you. I think you would hear that from them. And they've been participants in the health curriculum and in the drug and alcohol curriculum for many, many years.
Doctor,
that would be my response.
if I may, I heard you use the word investigate teachers at the high school. And I would concur, and if there's a stronger word than quantum leap, I'd like to be able to use that. We have no reason whatever, and especially based on something that one person out of 2,300 youngsters at the high school put in the paper, to formalize some kind of investigation about a teacher or more teachers that may or may not be trying to influence youngsters. Dr. Elko talked a minute ago about our attempts to try to make sure that we do everything we possibly can to ensure that we have quality teachers in every respect. And I think we do that. I am fully unaware of anybody on our staff, whether it's a teacher, an administrator, or anyone else, that has tried in any way to influence youngsters as far as drugs are concerned. I would suspect, perhaps wrongly so, but I would suspect that if you chose to use such a strong word as investigate, that perhaps there are some names that you'd like to share with me at some private point in time, and I'd be happy to review that.
Well, these are the assurances that I'm looking for, the types that you're talking about tonight, and maybe investigate was too strong a word. But I think that it might be worth our while for someone to sit down with this student and maybe determine where these attitudes came from, and just make sure that the programs you're talking about are working, and that there isn't something that maybe you don't know about, and maybe something that we should be looking at. So, thank you for your assurances.
Thank you. Saw another hand in the back, yes, sir.
My name is Walter Kuzma. I live in Tolmanson Township. I have a few questions, first of all, for the school board. Then I'll get to Dr. Elko. When you decided to build this new school and you hired an architect, did you look into the fact that you can get free plans from the state of Pennsylvania Education Association? Or weren't you informed?
Well, sir, the architect is going to do more than just design the school for us.
That's not what I asked. I asked if you looked into it, or were you informed?
Yes, we knew that there were plans available.
But you didn't look into it and see what kind they were?
No.
Okay, that's a good answer there. All right, what frills do you intend to put in this new school?
That hasn't been determined yet. There will
I'd
be
say no
frills.
That's what they said about the other high schools. Now,
we only have one other high school, and I don't think there are frills in that high school. It served us well for 23 years.
Well, that's your opinion. That's not everybody's. Okay. All right, how many pupils will be transferred from this North Penn High School to the new school?
That depends on the enrollment in September of 1997, sir. I don't have our projections.
Do you have an idea?
It's around 1,000 initially.
About 1,000 in one school, about 1,800 in the other, 1,800 to 1,900 in the other school.
All right, how many teachers will be transferred then?
Several.
And how many new ones will you have to hire?
More as our population in this school district grows from 11,600 to 14,000, just as we've hired teachers as it's grown from 9,000 to 11,600 over the last 5 or 6 years.
Sir, we reviewed that very carefully when we made the decision to build another high school. And in fact, that was the culmination of the process after we had ruled out every other possible alternative for housing all the students that we project to have. Did we finally come to the conclusion that we needed a second high school, not to the size that the original committee had recommended, but yet a smaller school. So all those things were looked at in terms of staffing, in terms of the number of students, how we would do that, and obviously that made the decision. Now once the high school will be built, based on the population and the demographics of where those children live, then we will make the decision as to where the lines will be and how many students will go to each school. The
All right.
projected capacity of the new school will be 1,200 with an expansion capability up to 1,600 or 1,500.
And when I asked about frills, I meant gymnasiums, auditoriums, football fields, everything else. Do you plan to put a football field there?
Right now, that will be decided. There is room for a football field should we decide to do that. That has not been decided yet.
Well, it seems to me Lansdale Catholic uses our football field here, and if you build another school, they can also use it. You don't need two football fields. That's a lot of expense.
I agree with that, sir. We will be looking at that, and we will ask for community input when we go about deciding what should be in the school.
All right. How many acres of this? I think it's 150 some acres. How many's in the floodplain?
118.
134 acres total of property.
How much is on the?
How many's in the floodplain?
There's probably 30 acres in
That means 30 acres you have that you paid for that you're never going to be able to use because you can't build anything on it.
That's right. That's typical of most properties that you buy in the North Penn School District.
Especially that large.
And a good natural.
Besides, we can take that natural beauty of the stream that goes through, put a bridge over, and I think it'll be real nice.
Everything you do is going to cost the taxpayer money, though. The money that you're going to spend to build this new school, is that already borrowed? Is that already appropriated for?
No, sir.
Or do you have to borrow it?
For the actual construction of the school, we still need to borrow for that.
Why don't you put it out on bids? Money's money. You get it
We
at
do
the
do
cheapest
that.
rate you can.
We absolutely do that. And if you've been to any of the school board meetings where we've discussed refinancing or any of the bond issues, you'll see that it's out on bids, and we get the best bid that we can possibly get for that day, that time.
Well, that's good news.
And
Thank you.
Mr. Kelly could share that with you at any time you wish.
Now, I'd like to get over to Dr. Elko. What is required of a student to graduate? What I mean is, when I went to school, you had to have 4 credits of English, 4 of science, 4 of history, and 4 of math. Now, what do you require today in these schools?
Sir, following the meeting, if you leave Dr. Venema your name and address, we'll send you the high school program of studies which outlines the requirements for graduation. I don't have those sitting here in front of me, nor do I feel it's appropriate to take the time to go over all the course requirements for students here in the school district. We'll send you a copy. After you read it, if you have questions, you can call Dr. Venema and go over that with him. There's several requirements.
Okay, now, I read a lot of bad things going on in the high school lately, knives and so forth. Who controls your halls in between classes?
Controls the halls?
Yeah.
Let me correct something first. A lot of, what did you say?
Who?
Knives?
Yeah, it's been in the paper here in the last week. Stealing jackets, knives.
Out of 2,300 students, a couple of situations where students have been apprehended with knives is not a lot. However, there have been a couple of incidents, and they are presently, those matters are under the disciplinary code involving student discipline in the board, so I can't go into specifics because the matters are being presented to the board for expulsion. The control of the students, the discipline of the students is conducted by our professional and support staff at North Penn High School.
Well, I was down to school one time a few years ago, and this was between classes when the bell rang, and there was a lot of loitering around and a lot of throwing stuff around and everything else. Now, I'm not saying we were right back in '02, but we had members of the football team or the basketball team or so, when they had their study periods, they would be out in the hall, sitting down, directing people, and walking back and forth, and there was very little noise, and there was all kinds of attention.
You know what, sir? I'm going to extend to you a personal invitation, because I think your visit 2 years ago to North Penn High School was very unfortunate if you saw that, because I think if you visited our high school with our high school principal, who's in the back of the room, certainly at the end of the meeting, he'll get your phone number. I don't think you'll see that at all, and perhaps one of our student representatives can take some time and show you around and show you the kinds of things that our young people are doing. I am very proud of our high school and our students. They have done an excellent job. We have very few discipline problems. We don't have any kind of significant issues of danger. In talking with our students, I talked with our high school principal Wednesday morning following a student disciplinary hearing, and I would say that our students feel safe and they feel that the school is well run and they don't feel threatened by other students. That's my analysis of the situation. I'd like you to see it personally. So, Dr. Bond, at the end of the meeting, would you arrange for a visit for this gentleman? Fine, thank you.
Okay,
Then
then I,
go
then
from
I,
A or C pod to the gym in 4 minutes, and we'll see how
Then-
much standing
then-
around goes on.
then this time when I go down and go through the halls, I won't see students standing in the corner smooching and everything else. Thank you.
Sir, they did that when I went to high school.
I heard they were doing it in elementary school.
That you will see, Bill. Just so the teachers aren't doing it.
Good evening. I'm Bill Roman from Upper Gwinnett Township. Dick, I do want to thank you for your professional response to the taxpayers' inquiry regarding professional fees. Have no qualms with selecting professionals on the basis of a proven track record and accomplishment, and applaud your approach. Now, as a former consultant with an international firm in New York City, I do think that it's wise, as part of your process, to evaluate the professional needs in terms of the magnitude of expertise and the time likely to be consumed in any given job versus the nature of the fee structure. It does appear that you have done that. So I'm pleased. But the principal reason for my being up here involves the issue of the school district's payment to Towamencin Township of, I believe, about $46,000 for police services to the senior high school. Now, I have seen the police statistics. Indeed, I have them right here. And the number of incidents at the North Penn High School is high. 425 in 1992 and 430 in 1993.
Mr. Roman?
Yes.
1 second, please, because statistics can be used in a million ways.
I know that.
When you drive into the high school and ticket 50 cars parked illegally at a football game, that's 50 incidents.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So when you talk about 400, it's not 400 arrests for students or anything like
Now-
that. So I just wanted to clarify that because I
Fine.
don't want people to get the wrong
The
impression.
patrol, they do state that they do not include in these statistics patrol time for dances, football, or basketball games, or even graduations. That's billed separately and under a separate account. All right? That's stated by the police chief of Towamencin. One member of the Towamencin's governing body described the high school as the highest crime area in the township. Now, the issue is really not whether the payment is moral or right. Frankly, I believe it is. But whether it's legal. Having read your distinguished legal counsel's opinion regarding the justification of this payment, he concluded his opinion with this sentence: "I cannot, however, guarantee at this point that the contribution would not be subject to challenge or guarantee a favorable decision in connection with any challenge." Another law firm, Landis, Kearns, PC and Associates, has itself examined this issue and found this to be an illegal undertaking and void under the Public Code Act of 1949. And they cited Section 6-610 and an opinion from Barth versus the Philadelphia School District case to support their opinion back in 1958. Now, $46,000 a year is small potatoes in terms of an $86 million budget. So I don't want to make too big an issue of this. The North Penn Taxpayers Association is concerned with the payment's legality as well as the precedent which has been established by it. Would you propose paying, for instance, Lansdale for its police expenses related to the junior high? The state has 501 school districts. How many of those school districts have senior highs serving multiple communities, and how many are paying the township in which the school is located for police services? Are we the first in the state to do that? Now, the Norristown Times-Herald did have an editorial on January 3rd, 1994, this year, against what's taking place here, because they felt, you know, in Norristown you've got the county courthouse, which has all kinds of activity, but Norristown doesn't collect a dime for its extra services because of the courthouse being there from the county, and so forth. So I want to just urge caution. I'm not, the morality is obvious to me. The amount of incidences reported is the equivalent of one police officer in the township of Towamencin in that regard. The question really is a legal one, and the precedent that has been set and what the implications of that precedent are. One short final question. You published the performance of the top 10% of your students, and their SATs were stated at 1,203, which is a fabulous score. And the students and the school deserve to be given credit for this. Was this 10% of the entire student body, or 10% of those taking the test? The SAT test. 10% of those taking the test. Okay. Thank you very much.
All right, Mr. Roman, I would like to respond to you as a legal counsel.
Sure.
First of all, my opinion to which you have referred indicates that I say that this is a legal contribution based on the school district. There's not a person in the world that can ever guarantee that anything will ever be challenged, something will not be challenged, or somewhere down the line there may be an adverse decision. That's all it says. For you to take that line out of context and say that I said that is absolutely not true. Now let me finish. I sat very carefully and listened to your statement.
Fine.
I also pointed out that Barth case after I did the research and set it forth in my communication. And I distinguished, in my opinion, the Barth case from what the present statutes and what the present laws provide. I've had conversation with a law firm that you indicated, which I think is your solicitor, discussing the legality of this contribution. And I've advised him of the legality. I've advised him of the statutes that I've supported. He has given me absolutely nothing that would support his contention that this is an illegal contribution, particularly since I advised him of the Barth case, and he himself couldn't guarantee to you that his decision is absolutely correct or that I would not be prevailed. I submit to you that my research, and I've had subsequent research because this issue was raised by your counsel, by your governing council and your legal counsel. I have responded in both instances. I have submitted a legal document or a legal opinion to this Board of School Directors indicating that I do say and will support this contribution. And this school board entered into a decision and entered into a contractual obligation, which it is not only morally obligated to fulfill, but also it is legally obligated to fulfill because that was an agreement entered into.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I am aware of the fact that there has been an issue raised or a request made for this Board of School Directors to reconsider what that contribution. The school board advised your group, and I also recall your council was advised, that this school district felt itself morally committed and legally committed to any action it undertook, and in good faith, based on good sound legal grounds, and it did not intend to undo that which it already committed itself to do. And I again submit to you, sir, with all due respect, that based on the statutory law which followed the Barth case, that this Board of School Directors has the right to enter into such an agreement with the governing boards of adjacent or component municipalities, and that the action that was taken was legal. And I have submitted my legal research and my legal opinion to this board. And we have met, we have discussed it, and I still rely on the soundness of that opinion. I've seen nothing to the contrary other than your reciting or your counsel reciting to me the Barth case, which I originally pointed out to you in my original communication, which I was firmly aware of before I made that opinion to this board, what they could and what they couldn't do.
Thank you. What you're saying is that it's legal.
Absolutely.
That's all my concern is, because I'm not really taking any side in this matter, but I wanted to bring it up to make sure that with the equivocation that I saw, now maybe that was not exactly what you intended, but I saw it that way, that this thing stood as a potential problem for the school district. I don't want it to be one. But I have heard from other legal counsel that this is an issue, so be it. As far as I'm concerned, then this issue rests, because we just wanted to bring it up to make sure it was adequately covered. Now, I think that's it.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
Any other red hand in the back? Red sweater in the back? Good to see you. Just saw the hand. Oh. Mary Ann. Couldn't see your face back there.
That's okay. I just want to take a moment, and it just seems like there's been a lot of high school bashing here tonight. I have a child at the elementary level right now, and one soon to enter the high school, and I am just speaking for myself, but I feel very comfortable in sending my child to that high school. I have had the good fortune of spending a day at that high school, and I am comfortable in sending him there. I feel it is very safe. Putting 2,300 children in any building is going to present problems, but I feel the administration up there has done more than an exemplary job in handling that school, and I am excited to see my son get a quality education that he will be getting next year as he is getting now. The drug message, I think, is more than brought home to our children starting from their earliest years. I have a child now in 4th grade, and the message is brought home at an appropriate level for each grade. I personally am not threatened by one young adult's opinion. I am more, in fact, pleased that a child can express their opinion, and we can all look at it as a point to discuss with our own children the pros and cons. And I personally am not threatened by an article that a young adult wrote in our high school, and I'm looking forward to my child's education there.
Thanks, Mary.
I'm a student at North Bend High School, and I'd just like to take this moment to speak. Well, my name is Amy Sin, and I'd just like to take this moment to speak for all the students of North Bend High School, to say that I think that North Bend High School is a very, very good high school, and I feel totally safe. And I'm not aware of any problems, people fearing for their life or knives being passed around and these things. I'm not aware of that, and I think the majority of the people are intent on, furthering their education. And also in response to that article that a certain student wrote, I'm friends with that student, and she was in no way intending to try to spread, trying to encourage people to take marijuana. She is a very conscientious student, and I think she was just taking a moment to express her scholarly opinion, and she was in no way trying to encourage people to try drugs and to ruin their lives that way. So,
thank you. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak to the floor tonight? Okay. In which case, we'll move on to, I'm sorry. I didn't see your hand.
Because I was blending in there.
Who's leaving?
Yeah, well, I'm Ruth Nazamek, and I have a senior and a sophomore at North Penn High School. And I understand that gentleman, I'm sorry, I forget your name. I understand his concerns because they were my concerns and always are my concerns, because I'm interested in education. I'm interested in the character formation of my children. And I would like to tell him that I've had a lot of surprises. I was always afraid of public school, really afraid of it. And I have found North Penn to be, very fine. And I have been in the school and have been amazed. And I think he should visit the school. I was convinced that another school was needed by visiting the school several times and being in the halls when they're changing classes and seeing what is happening and how well behaved that amount of students is. I mean, when you read the paper and you hear the rumors, you hear the stories, they always become so much bigger. And then you go in the school and you say, oh, high school students are civilized. They do walk hallways, and they don't knock you over. And I think that your invitation to this gentleman to visit the school is very good. And I think that he should keep his eye on the majority. And the other thing is, as far as the education, I felt that, I did fine in high school. And I boasted when my children, they got geometry, and I said, oh, geometry, I love geometry. My children learned more geometry, harder, more difficult geometry in 1 month than I did in an entire year. I only could help them about the first 2 weeks of school. It was way beyond what I ever learned. And I'd have to say that for the good students, for students who wish to be challenged, for parents who wish their children to receive a good education, it's all there. And I think that if it's any comfort to that gentleman, I do think there's so much good at that school to avail yourself of. And I think students who, he's reading about, many times they aren't interested because maybe their parents aren't interested. And it does go back to the home. What goes into the school? The school can only do so much. Thank you.
Mrs. Nesmick, thank you, and perhaps the members of the press that are here after the meeting would like to stay around and talk with you for just a few minutes.
Great. Anyone else? Okay, we'll move on to the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Mr. Bowman. If you could please turn to the addendum BAA 1. First item on the addendum, I recommend the approval of the expulsion of a student whose name is on file in the office of the superintendent for 30 days effective February 7th, 1994.
Second.
Moved by Burkowski, second by White. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
And if you could turn back now to page BA1 of the main body of the agenda, item 4A. I recommend approval of the revision of the 1993-94 school calendar as identified in your packet as that calendar proposed February 17, 1994.
So moved.
Moved by Redcamp, second by Burkowski, by Allen. Are there any questions?
Dick, I want to qualify my vote here because we didn't have a work session meeting on this. I just want it known that I'm very supportive of the board's direction with revisiting the calendar. I too understand the need to revisit taking Easter break days, and I'm not in opposition to that. I do, however, am going to vote a negative vote here because I do have concerns regarding the makeup time, and I have concerns over seeing that instructional time that will be lost or sacrificed from teachers that will be on vacation. Is it necessarily being repaid back to the students who will be missing them on Easter break days? So my point is that had there been some arrangements made to where rather than they make them up post the end of the school year, but rather perhaps something was arranged that in return for the 3 days off, that the time that was owed the district was paid back in after-school tutoring, help with special needs students in their subject matter, something of that sort, rather than perhaps committees or personal days and what have you. I just really feel that the pocket that we are taking that time from in excused absences is really coming from the students, and that's the time that I believe where they earn their keep. I value the time that they're in the classroom, and I just would have liked to have seen a stronger return on that.
Mrs. Sherr, we will look at that suggestion to return some of the time through after-school tutoring. We will seriously look into that.
And could I also make a suggestion then? If it isn't so finalized with your communications, that there be some consideration of the in-service days, that if we can reach a cooperative spirit with Mr. Jordan if necessary, that we ask our teachers to consider an option to the in-service days that they may attend seminars or something after the end of the school year, that perhaps they might return that time, the 7.5 hours per day, through parent conferences after school. I know that we can't require them to, but it may be possible that on a voluntary basis, they may be willing to do that if we can reach an agreement to do that, because it is our third marking period. And it's very vital where the communications between the teachers and the parents are very close. And if if these sort of things have been considered rather than workshops.
We will continue our discussions with Mr. Jordan. Mr. Schmidt and I have had a number of discussions with Jeff, and I would say that the Teachers Association leadership and the teachers have been extremely supportive and cooperative of the discussions to change the calendar. They recognize the difficulty in the situation. They have been absolutely supportive and working in a collegial teamwork atmosphere with us in this whole matter.
Dr. Elko, I'd like to add to, I had concerns also, but not enough to vote against the recommendation tonight. I will support what the plan is on the calendar, and I also support the commitment that personnel has, specifically Fred Schmidt, that we are going to follow as best as we can under the situation the spirit and letter of the contract and the contract intent as we continue on negotiating without a contract. And I had a short conversation with Jeff Jordan. I made it very clear to him that I would personally see to and support through personnel that whatever they receive in any kind of accommodation or alleviation, that they will pay back, that there will be nothing given away for free. They don't want anything taken away. I understand that. I'd feel the same way if I was a member of the union. But they will not get anything for free, and it will be made up, and there will, I feel and trust that this school will make sure that there is no loss in quality and no loss in money. And trust Fred to expedite that, and we will do so through personnel.
Any other comments or questions regarding this? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you. Page BA2, please. I'll make this recommendation item by item. I recommend the approval. Oh, I'm sorry, I missed one. Yes, 4B, I'm sorry. I recommend the approval of Sandra Lamola as an ESL tutor for the 93-94 school year.
So moved.
Second by Kowski, second by Redcamp. Any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Item 4C1, I recommend the appointment of Joseph Biro and Associates for the Gwynnor fuel oil tank replacement.
So moved.
Second. Moved by Redcamp, second by Whites. Any questions?
Just to clarify, that's engineering services for the replacement.
Correct.
For all these.
All but one, 4 is architecture.
I'm sorry. Thanks. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
I recommend the appointment of Eastern Consultants for the North Penn High School fuel oil replacements.
So moved.
Second. Moved by Redcamp, second by Allen. Any questions?
Question. If these are all engineering services and they're all fuel oil tank replacements, can we combine them all and get a good deal?
When we quoted them, we did it both ways.
We're getting this is the best deal.
Yeah, we got the deal. We took the low.
You got the deal?
We got it. Hit them all.
We get the Lolo.
Okay.
All those in
Thank you.
favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Item C3, I recommend Joseph E. Biro and Associates, North Penn High School boiler replacement.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Prokowski, second by Allen. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Sorry, I didn't ask for questions. Any questions? Thanks.
Item 4, I recommend Dyson Road and Wolf Architects for the North Penn High School bus canopy repair and replacement.
So moved.
Second. Moved by Prokowski, second by Allen. Are there any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
And I recommend Joseph Biro and Associates for the North Penn High School stadium lighting and installation.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Prokowski, second by Allen. Are there any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Item 4D, I suppose I have to regretfully recommend the approval to pay 15 cents a gallon of capacity for each school district underground fuel oil storage tank to the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania Underground Storage Tank Indemnification Fund, and I would add as a footnote for the minutes, for those people in the audience for the first time tonight, this is a legal requirement imposed by the state on all the school districts, not something that our board dreamed up.
As well as everyone else, including the school
Right,
districts.
including the school districts.
Regretfully moved.
Regretfully second.
Been regretfully moved by David White, and regretfully seconded.
Question, what if we say no?
Then
Why do
it'd
we
be
even,
fine
why are we even?
if we don't pay it.
Why are we even approving it? I mean,
Because you'll be in
It's
violation of the law
approving
if you don't
it's
approve it.
approving expenditure of funds that weren't.
It even gets further complicated. They just cannot deliver oil without proof of payment of this fund. So when the tank goes dry,
She
we're out
she
of
can do
here.
the jail time, we'll put it as a
Well,
cost.
If Terry's in jail, does that mean we can still get the wall?
I'm not watching her kids.
Additional questions. I would suggest that we ask, this law, school districts were expected to be exempted because we don't have the flow through our tanks that caused the problem that this law was presented with. In the end, school districts and municipalities did not get exceptions, that was anticipated. And I would ask that we have Carmen Leahy, who is our legislative representative, send a letter to our legislative delegation asking to revisit this at Harrisburg to get an exemption for school districts, so that, because this is $35,000?
yes.
Art? $35,000 a year that really doesn't hit the issue that people are looking for. And I think that we ought to go approach our delegation to get relief in future years.
A little more than that. Dick, in the work session we had on Tuesday night, I had asked, and solicitor was not there, but I would, if it's possible for solicitor to seek out whether or not we are in fact indemnified in the event that we have a spill and in need of remediation of these funds. It's called an indemnification fund, but yet I see or have heard of no proof that we're indemnified. Secondly, I think we need to go a little bit further beyond Carmen, our capable liaison, and a very serious letter. We can sit up here and say we're regretful and we can whine and sound malcontented, but maybe a very strong letter not only from the superintendent but our solicitor that we grieve this and find it an onerous burden.
I would suggest that a letter from our board secretary on behalf of the board that we're approving this under protest.
No, everything eventually does end up.
He's such a good writer.
It goes, you see how it went around the board? Eventually somebody was going to write it.
Are there any other questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All those were reluctant yeses.
Thank you. Item 4E, I recommend the approval of the transportation services contract for the 93-94 school year.
So moved.
Seconded.
Moved by White, second by Pankowski. Are there any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I would call your attention to the addendum BAA1 again. I recommend the approval to join the Greater North Penn Transportation Management Association, GNPTMA, at an approximate cost of $5,200, and to make Fred Schmidt our transportation czar.
A regretful move again.
The Fred part or the moving part? Where's the second by Clemens. I'd like to point out that that's $5,200 a year, and for the first year it'll be prorated for whatever
correct
value of that. Are there any other questions or comments?
No, just the same thing. I think another one of those letters where we grieve and find it onerous and we think it's ludicrous and, they need a weekend with Rush Limbaugh, to appreciate.
I have a question, perhaps for the solicitor, I'm not sure, or the president. Once we voted on it this time, so it's an annual type fee, once we vote, we continue our membership, or do we have to vote on this item every year?
Can't answer that. I haven't seen what was submitted to you to approve.
Between now and when we might have to do it again, if we could get an opinion, it would be great.
Well, just as I wish. It's as we wish, I would think.
I mean, we have to write our plan by what,
Yeah,
November?
I would assume that next year at this time, if we elected to join again, I'd present you
Bring it
with
forward again?
Sure, something to vote on again.
And if this gets really ugly and the fee goes up to $25 a person, we might really
Then I'll have
be
somebody else
hard
present
pressed.
that.
Yeah, okay.
We amend that then?
Yeah, we'll do it ourselves.
It's a 1 year, 1 year membership.
Well, it's not a one-year membership. Obviously, if we're prorating it for the rest of this year, the rest of this year ends at some point, whether it's the fiscal year or the calendar year. We're paying some portion of $5,200, at which time we'll be expected to pay $5,200 for the next contiguous year, as I understand. All right, so we ought to amend this to say that we will pay for this year until the end of whatever time it is that they renew, and then at which time it'll come back before the board for a $5,200.
It's not a spa
Ken, do you have that
membership.
written down?
Isn't that right?
Dick, I would assume that if you just want to make it for the 1994 year, then we'll be back at some other point in time, because I think the year probably began somewhere in November or December.
That's my point.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a transferable membership.
Like a spa, right?
Sell it to
Yeah.
Sorry, I asked a question.
All right.
Comment for the record, it's the Greater North Penn Area Transportation Management Association. Yeah,
What did I say?
Fred knows that, right? I thought you would, since
Okay.
you're our appointed.
Area's not out.
As amended.
Just for the record.
Fred, the OPPs are.
Easy
Can we get a
APA.
vote on that?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
That was much more enthusiastic.
Back to page BA2, please. Item F, I recommend the acceptance of the following gifts to the district.
So moved.
From the Gwinnett Home and School Association, banners. From the Gwinnett Square Home and School Association, library books. And for the York Avenue Home and School Associations, a letter machine.
Donna moved it, I'll second it.
So moved again.
Second.
Moved by Mangle, second by Redcamp. Is there any questions?
What's a letter machine?
Makes letters.
Makes letters.
It punches out letters from
You know,
construction
like a
paper.
thing,
Teachers
like
use
an
them at
A.
home. Oh, those kind of
how they
letters.
get them so
What kind of
nice.
letters? Thank you.
You know, could you,
You didn't graduate
Six
with
of
Pen.
and numbers. Maybe it's a letters and numbers.
I call them word processors. They call them letter machines.
No. This isn't electrons. Expensive letters. Any other questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Laser print.
Item G, I recommend awarding the bids as listed.
So moved.
Second.
Redcamp, second by Allen.
Twice.
Twice. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Page BA3, I recommend the nomination of the professional employees as listed.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by
Fredkowski.
Kowski, second. You're the only woman over there. Second by Redcamp.
So the only high
Any
voice.
questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Page BA4, I recommend the nomination of the support staff as listed.
Can't find it.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Redcamp, second by Kowski. Any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
I recommend the board approve the resignations as listed.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Kowski, second by White. Any questions? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
Item 3, I recommend the salary changes as listed.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Kowski, second by White. Any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Page BA5, I recommend the extension of the leave of absence.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Kowski, second by White. Question? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Item 5, I recommend the leave of absence.
So moved.
Moved by Kowski.
Second.
Second by Allen.
Question, is this included in, I assume this is in the policies as it's now stated?
That is correct.
Any other questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries.
Item 6, I recommend the approval of the additions to the 93-94 professional and support staff substitute lists.
So moved.
Second by Kowski, second by Redcamp. Any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Item 7, I recommend the approval of the additions, deletions, and changes to the extra duty assignments for the 93-94 school year.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Redcamp, second by Whites. Any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Item I recommend the student travel as listed.
So moved.
Second. Moved by Shear, second by Allen.
Question.
Any questions? Carried.
What is our chaperone ratio?
Our district chaperone ratio is 15-1 for secondary students.
So we're well covered.
Don, no question, just a request. On 3, you have here the $1,200 for the 2 students to the congressional workshop. I'd like to see that list broken down. I'd like to know what that $1,200 is going to, if you just provide it to me later. Thank you.
I'd like a copy of that.
Any other questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
A vandalism report is attached. I would also like to read a letter that I received. It's from the American Red Cross. Dear Dr. Elko, students and employees in school districts throughout our region contribute over 25,000 blood donations annually. On behalf of the area hospital patients, we extend special thanks for the 530 donations from North Penn School District employees and students in the 1992-93 school year. We salute Mr. Jim Finnemeyer, coordinator of the high school drive, and Mrs. Sally Kaufman, chairperson of the faculty drive, for their hard work and dedication in order to improve the quality of life in our community. They have played an instrumental role in our mission. Please accept this appreciation plaque and place it in the localized area for all to view. Thank you for your continued support in the blood program. Sincerely, Catherine A. Bachneck, American Red Cross. So I'd like to commend the staff and the students for donating 530 pints of blood to the Red Cross. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Dr. Rocco. Mr. Allen, would you like to have the reading of the board policy?
Yes. Tonight, we're going to have the second reading, and if we can, vote.
Excuse me.
Yes.
I would like to make a motion that the board accept this plaque and award on behalf of the staff and students, since we have a new
Before the
policy.
policy's ready.
Are we allowed?
Let me see
Yeah,
that.
because the policy's not in.
Let me see the
Then I'm
plaque.
not going to ask you.
Pass the plaque down here.
Now I know why you squeezed it in before.
This is policy 1280, community relations, participation by the public, acceptance of awards and honors. Again, this is the second public reading as required by board policy, at which time we'll have any discussion and vote. And the policy reads, the Board of School Directors recognizes there may be occasions when community groups and/or individuals may wish to present an award or in some way honor the school district or a specific school. The board also recognizes that some awards could present real or perceived endorsement of the group or individual by the school district, the school board, and/or district administrators. With this in mind, it is imperative that the Board of School Directors be made aware of any award being considered for the district or a district school before such award can be accepted. It is a responsibility of the superintendent and the appropriate responsible administrators to provide the board with advanced information about any award or recognition being considered. It is not the intent of this policy to block or inhibit awards. The intent is to keep the board fully apprised of any efforts by community groups or individuals whereby the good name of the district might be impacted by the award or recognition.
Thank you, Bill.
And I will move that we accept this policy.
So moved.
Moved by Allen, second by Mangle. Are there any questions? Great. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Now we can hang the plaque, Dr.
Now we can hang. Do we need to vote on the plan? Okay. We can turn to page BA6, other business. Some administrative matters that I'd like to cover. We need a motion to recommend approval and transfer of $1,000 from the general fund to the North Penn School District Authority.
So moved.
Moved by Redcamp.
Second.
Second by Whites. Are there any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We need I'd like to recommend approval of correct the length of term that we approved last month for approval of Don Hill, North Penn District Authority, will now be January 1st, 1993 to December 31st, 1997. Originally, we had it to 1998.
So
So moved.
Moved by Redcamp, second by Allen. Any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
A comment, one of the people on this particular authority, and a former board member recently passed away, and it was a sad passing for Vern Ziegler.
Yes, unfortunately. And we'll be making a recommendation at the next meeting after we look at candidates as to replacing her. Thanks, Ralph. We need to ratify approval to reappoint Mr. Haig to the North Penn District Authority for a 5-year term from January 1st, 1994 to December 31st, 1998.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Allen, second by Whites. All those in favor?
Wait, Dick, just comment, please, and you didn't allow for a question, or comments. As these names come up, many of us who've lived here all our lives know these names, and we know them to be of great repute, and some of them are actual, legends in the community. But I know that we have new board members, they haven't lived here all their lives, and it's just, we don't see a resume or anything on these people.
Right.
I see these names, no problem for me, but as, new board members, I think, and as you anticipate the replacement of Vern Ziegler, a resume, something on these people, who are they?
Actually, I've already talked to Mr. Weir about that. Each board member will be provided actually what the North Penn District Authority does, what their responsibilities, what is the genesis of that, and who's on the board, a summary of what their qualifications are, and then when we look at potential candidates for replacing Mr. Ziegler, you'll see that also.
Right.
So you'll be seeing that in your packets within the next week or so, I think, Mr. Weir.
Yes.
And
new members should be impressed with the quality of people that we have serving in these capacities and what they've meant to the community over a long period of time.
Understanding that they will only be with us as long as there are still bond issues outstanding of which they had authority with, and as we go through the bond refinancing process, we basically sell them off. So there may be at a point in time when they're no longer required, at which time the North Penn Authority will be dissolved. Okay? If you'll turn to Addendum BAA1, Mr. Clemens, would you like to recommend approval? Well, I'll let you address that.
I'll go ahead and move for approval of the AIA document B-141, Standard Form of Agreement between the owner and architect, which provides for the firm of Breslin, Ridyard, and Federo Architects to serve as architects for the new North Penn High School.
Second.
And I probably should add east to that.
East, yeah, very good. All right. It's been moved by Mr. Clemens, second by Mr. Whites. Is there any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Also, we need to recommend approval of the resolution set forth for the sale of the surplus property at Gwinnett Square Elementary School.
So moved.
Moved by Mengel, second by Perkowski. Is there any questions? Ralph?
I have a comment. Is any documentation on this in the packet for the public?
I'm sorry, Ralph.
No, it's not provided in keeping with our past practice. Once it's executed, voted on, and signed by the board president, then it becomes a public document.
This is 9-point-some acres, folks, and it's over $500,000 that the school district is gonna receive for this, which happens to be, as compared to any other land that we've bought or that I've seen sold around here, pretty good potatoes. It's an excellent price, and I think that Art Wood and the administration, as well as Dager and Dager, ought to be commended highly for their professionalism and good work in getting us top dollar for this piece.
In fact, Mr. Charles Dager is here with us tonight. He's to be commended for all of his hard work putting together the bid and the sale. So thank you again.
Mr. Bowman, I have a question for Mr. Potash. Would it be proper to read the resolution tonight for the public?
You have a resolution?
We have one right here.
Sure.
Should I go ahead and read it?
Yes.
Resolution, resolved that the Board of School Directors of the North Penn School District does accept and approve the agreement of sale in the form presented by Alpine Incorporated, 623 Horsham Road, Horsham, Pennsylvania, for the tract of land consisting of approximately 9.235 acres situate at the end of Huntington Circle and Quinn Lane in Upper Gwinnett Township, Montgomery County, Pennsylvania, which is attached hereto, made a part hereof, and marked Exhibit A for the consideration of $505,000, subject to the conditions set forth therein. Be it further resolved that the proper officers of this school district be and are hereby authorized to execute Exhibit A in the form presented. Be it further resolved that the solicitor is hereby authorized to file a petition in the Court of Common Pleas of Montgomery County in accordance with Section 707(3) of the Public School Code of 1949 as amended for court approval of said sale to Alpine Incorporated of 623 Horsham Road, Horsham, Pennsylvania.
Thank you, Tom. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Great, motion carries. Item F, we probably should have done this before item D, since we did change that. We need a motion to recommend approval of the name of the second high school, that being North Penn High School East, effective immediately, and to rename the current North Penn High School, North Penn High School West, effective July 1st, 1997.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Redcamp, second by Allen. Any other questions?
I just hope we don't get another dart. I mean, how many can you get in the same week for the same reason? I mean, we, you know.
What?
Scott will keep us from getting a dart, right?
I mean, you can only get, I mean, isn't there a quota on darts? I mean, we only get one per issue or?
One per day.
You're not in charge of darts, right?
You see he's in the second row tonight, he's not up front.
I mean, we got a little early. We got the dart before we approved it, you know, so.
Any other comments?
Got the dart before we knew about it.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, let me get to the right page here and we can press on. Treasurer's report, Mr. Kelly.
Right. Our cash receipts for the month, $2,120,163.22. Year-to-date, $76,031,880.26. Our disbursements for the month, $6,364,425. Disbursements year-to-date, $47,044,511.58. We have term investments in the amount of $3 million and temporary investments in the amount of $29,609,000.
Wish I had that in my bank account. Okay, the general fund invoices?
Yes, I recommend approval of our sanctioned disbursements for the month in the amount of $6,439,767.85, and approval of our disbursements for the month in the amount of $363,677.04.
So moved. Moved by Redcamp.
Second.
Second by Allen. Any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Food services, Mr. Hartenstein.
Thank you, Mr. Bowen. As with every other business in the North Penn community, during this past month, we've experienced financial difficulties. And as you can see in the statement of income and expenses, we are showing a loss for the month of January in the amount of $40,694.19. When schools are closed, the food service department experiences approximately a $12,500 loss in gross revenues. And since we were closed during the month of January for 10 days, we did in fact lose approximately $125,000 in gross revenues. And even though we were closed, fixed costs still continue. We purchased food for the month of January, which was delivered in December. We had benefits, some salaries that had to be paid, etc. So with the anticipation that those days are going to be made up and that a significant number of students will be in attendance on those days, we do expect to still continue to wipe out most, if not all, of that deficit. But if there should be a small deficit at the end of the year, the balance in the food service reserve account will be more than enough to offset that deficit. So I can assure the board we will make every attempt to eliminate that deficit by the end of the year. But the realities are that our business has been affected as much as any others.
Is it
it true that the rumor that the food service department is going to propose opening a video store for this offset the revenue loss?
I think that's a wonderful
It's the
idea.
business to go to.
I thought they were going with a lunch truck.
We'll sell a lot of hamburgers at Donna's house. Any other questions to Mr. Hartenstein of the food service report? Thank you, Bill. Charlie, do you have something on federal programs today? Okay. And Mr. Potash?
No report.
Okay, great.
I will, however, prepare, in fact, I've already undertaken the necessary preparation regarding seeking court approval of the sale, which we approved this evening. And I believe that that approval should be submitted probably within the next, we should have the approval within the next 6 weeks.
Thank you, Charlie.
Dick, I have a comment to add to Mr. Potash. On that particular item, Mr. Wood was kind enough to point out to me that for that sale of 9.235 acres, it does average out to $54,683 per acre. And I think that's important to get that out to the community, that I know I've been an outspoken critic about school district paying high prices for land, and this time in turn, the school district did get a high number per lot for this land.
I'm convinced that's your influence. Our friend Tom.
Any other business?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
We're adjourned. Thank you. Oh, there'll be an executive session after to discuss possible litigation. Thank you. Snuck that one in, didn't we?